Hello and welcome to Geekverse Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more. I'm your host, Dylan Muss, and today I'm joined once again by Dante. You're here
Hello.
for, you've been here so many times, I feel like it's not like a special guest thing anymore. You're kind of just a
Yeah,
regular, so
I'm the
that's kind of
rotating
fun.
chair. I love it.
Yes,
No,
it's
I'm
good to
happy to
have
be
you
here
back.
again. We're gonna talk about some pretty sick games this week. I'm
Mhm.
very jazzed about it. So thank you for having me.
Of course. And just a disclaimer for everyone out there, I'm having some major technology issues today, so bear with me if something sounds a bit weird. I'll try my best to fix it, but I can only do so much. But anyway, today's episode, we have two topics today. One, our main topic is going to be Triangle Strategy. This is the latest game from Square. You know, people say this is like from the team that made Octopath Traveler. I did some research, and that it seems like a different studio, but maybe some overlapping people. So I don't know
Oh,
exactly what the story is. We'll get into that. But anyway, main topic: Triangle Strategy review. This kind of turn-based strategy game from Square Enix Publishing, and then we're going to talk more about Elden Ring. So if you're here for the Elden Ring part, you see that in the headline. Last week we did about 2 hours worth of just talking about Elden Ring, and that was less spoiler. I think me and Dante here are going to get more into some deeper spoiler stuff, but that'll be after Triangle Strategy anyway. So we'll give you a heads up when
hell
that's the
yeah.
case. I'm very excited for both these games. I have
Me
to
too.
say, we talked about before we were recording how Elden Ring just like keeps pulling us back in. We try to do other life things, try to play other games, but it's like I would just rather be playing Elden Ring right now. And honestly, I'm loving both these games. So for me, it's like shit. I really want to see what happens next in the story of Triangle Strategy, but I also need to know what's around that fucking cliff that I haven't got to yet in Elden Ring. So it's a good time for video games. I mean, February was crazy, and like all those games landed pretty much. So
Oh
that's pretty
yeah,
insane.
and March is showing no sign of being any slouch either. It's gonna be a messy Q1, Q2 as far
Yeah.
as getting all these games in. Tough job. Tough job.
Mm-hmm. It's super tough. Yeah. Let's get some housekeeping things out of the way. Next week's episode, I'm going to be joined again by Travis. We're going to talk. There's a State of Play, Sony State of Play tomorrow, or I guess today when you're listening to this. So we'll talk about that. And then I think we'll actually do Horizon Forbidden West, like full spoilers. So we did a 3-hour long cast on the game, but we weren't finished the story yet. Now, I have finished the story. I hope he finishes it before the next episode, and then we'll kind of get deep into that. So that's what you can expect for next week. Dante, I don't know if I think I told you about this in passing, but we kind of have a kind of video game competition thing, kind of wrestling inspired
Yeah,
that we do called
yeah.
the Geekverse Gauntlet, and we were supposed to do this Halo match like a month ago. It finally happened last weekend, so me and Taylor squared off in some Halo. So
How
I'm
did
not
it
going to
go?
spoil the results of
Okay,
that. Go check
all
it
right.
out. But I'll just say that I was feeling myself, and it's a good time. So the
Nice.
audio is a bit whack, so sorry about that. But at least the gameplay looks good. So go check that out. It was fun. And then also Travis and Kirkland faced off in some sports games as well. So that was a good time.
Nice.
Thank you to Taylor for making the thumbnails for this episode. Thank you to Amanda who makes the music. Subscribe to the SideQuest feed to get the video game focused content there. Join our Patreon for episodes early to get episodes early and ad free. Join the Discord. Discord's fun, and then Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that other Geekverse goodness. So yeah, I think we're ready to just get right into Triangle Strategy. So like I said, this is kind of maybe from Octopath Traveler. So when I was looking into it, it's like the producer of Octopath, or one of the producers of Octopath Traveler, is the director for this game. There's clearly like it's made in the same engine, this 2D HD 2D engine, and
Yep.
even like the character portraits and stuff like look identical to Octopath. So I think there's a lot of overlap in the people who made these games, but obviously it's a different genre as well. But even when you're playing it, like just little things like I don't know, just little icons they use and stuff just seems very similar. So I think there is a lot of crossover, but maybe not necessarily the exact same team. It's also a different composer, although composers are usually not internal in the studio anyway. But anyway, it's kind of the next game in that realm of things with this HD 2D. We got Live Alive later this year as well. That kind of has that same look.
Yeah,
And I mean,
that
it's a
game looks
great
fucking
look.
amazing. Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. I have been blown away by Live Alive or Live Alive every
Yeah.
single time I've seen just like somebody mentions it, and I just want to look at screenshots of that game. It's so
Yeah.
damn pretty. And it makes me want every single SNES game from my childhood to get remade in this engine because what I would do for some Breath of Fire. Oh, some good
Yeah.
Capcom
I think
RPG goodness. It's been too long.
I think it's gonna happen, man. Like, I think Chrono Trigger will happen. I think other big
Yeah,
ones will have maybe some Final Fantasies as well. I mean, I guess Final Fantasy maybe not because they're doing like their pixel
they're doing the
remaster
pixel
stuff.
remasters. Well,
But
there's
I mean, Final Fantasy is so huge, and they're always gonna keep remaking these things that I could see that happening
well,
anyway. And one thing I hope is that I feel like Octopath and now this game and Live Live all kind of look the exact same. Like I hope maybe there can be a bit more. Like it looks great, and I'm not tired of it yet. But I think if we keep getting these remakes and they're all just the exact same and like it's very dreamy and the water effect, like I think we maybe will need a little bit of variety in terms of some of the specifics. But I mean, just in terms of the engine itself, like it is just great and runs well on the Switch and all that stuff. So it's very nice to have these games, new games or old. It's just fun to have them.
yeah, it's stuff that looks like how you remember it in your head almost. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
this is what pixel art felt like when I was using it on actual Super Nintendo. But then you like actually go back and look at that stuff, and it does not look nearly as crisp
Mm-hmm.
as this aesthetic, which just works beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Are we just jumping right into it? Can I
Well, yeah.
talk
Where are
about
you?
that
Where are you at?
aesthetic
How
actually?
many? Which chapter are you on, or
All
how
right.
long have you
I
played?
think I'm in chapter 2.
Okay, so you're
So
nice and early on here.
I was like, I'm gonna jump into this game and I'm gonna spend 2.5, 3 hours with it. And I realized that turned into a battle and a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
intro is, I'd go so far to say, not its best foot forward, right? Like
Yeah.
I got to play some combat and I was like, okay, all right, this is some like, I can't really tell the nuance of this game compared to another strategy game outside of the like skill mechanic being turn based, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I can get into a little bit later. But yeah, I really only got to do like that 30-minute battle, it felt like, and then I was
Yeah.
like, all right, it was like 1 a.m. I was like, I'm just gonna get through it. I'm gonna fight a few battles. It'll be great. I'll have a good understanding of the video game. And boy, oh boy, did I put that on auto and set it onto my nightstand and just listened
Yeah.
for like an hour and a half. It felt like
Yeah.
maybe it's not that long, but it's a long
No,
time.
you're probably true. I think for myself, the first 2 hours, yeah, I think a good hour and a half of that was just kind of story, cutscenes, and
Yeah.
dialogue, and then the battles. Yeah, I mean, you can take longer with those depending on how you play, I guess. But really, it's not a lot at the start, and so yeah, for myself, I've played quite a bit this last week, or at least I've put about 16 hours, and I'm on chapter
Woo.
10. Generally, like for the first while, each chapter takes around an hour, it feels like, and then eventually they start like part one, part two of these chapters, and they end up taking a bit longer. Obviously,
Right.
there's also kind of optional stuff like you can do some more auxiliary battles, and there's even cutscenes and stuff that are optional as well. So that's kind of your pace. It will kind of depend on how you play, but at least for me, that's
Mhm.
where I'm at. And yeah, so I wanted to shout that out because you're so far kind of in the demo area. The demo goes up to the end of chapter 3,
Yeah.
and so the demo is on obviously on the Switch eShop, and you can play the first 3 chapters, and then your progress, if you choose to get the full game, carries over. And so I did want to like throw some disclaimers out there because if you are into this game for the strategy and strategy only, I think this game will be a slog. I think there is a lot of dialogue, especially that first 2 hours. It's intense, and
Do you-
I liked it, but it was just a bit overbearing, and I wanted to like just control the game more.
Yeah.
And there are times when it kind of that becomes more subtle, and there's these other phases of the game as well. But even like this last like 2 hours roughly of my gameplay has been a lot of story again. I'm really into the story, and
I was gonna
I'm
ask
really
that.
enjoying it. And I was a bit burnt out in the demo, but like for everything else, I've not skipped. Like when I was playing that demo, I did skip a couple cutscenes, and I'm like, come on, I want to play here. But since then, like after chapter 3 and onward, I haven't skipped anything, and I'm doing all the extra stuff. Like I'm super
That's
into
awesome.
it. But it has a very slow start. So my recommendation is for people, go play the demo because it's free, but get to the end of the demo because in chapter 3 you kind of have this bigger decision, and that's
Mhm.
really captivating. And that one's like pretty simple, but they do like that's like maybe my favorite part of the game is these decisions, and you get to do a lot of that stuff. And there are some other phases, but yeah, I wanted to get that disclaimer out
Would
there.
would you say outside of the demo, do they have a conflict that really you feel like is like a super driving force for you? Because in the beginning, it really does fall into like JRPG
Yeah.
trope central. It's like you're the
Absolutely.
prince and you're there to meet the princess, and you guys are in rival lands, and hopefully it'll solve some sort of like conflict that you guys are having. But then there's this third evil land, and
Hmm.
they're the real bad guys. So you guys get married, everything's going fine. Like that's not necessarily exactly what it is, but it just comes
No,
off
it really
very,
is like it comes off very generic
yeah.
in the beginning. And
And
I
the voice
I don't
acting
know if
is a little. There's people who I'm like, you're killing it, you are crushing it, and there's people who I'm like, never talk again.
yeah, so two other disclaimers, recommendations for me. One, switch to Japanese dialogue. That acting is a lot better for me, and it is a lot of reading. So if longer scenes, like maybe you don't want to be reading that whole time. For me, it's worth it. And honestly, like not even hyperbole. There's this one section where, without spoiling the specifics here, there's a character who is finding out that their child has died, and it's just this short little 1 minute long scene. But the performance from this voice actor, he's like choking up, and I just had like some tears welling up in my eyes. Like there is some great performances in here, but for me, I was not finding it with the English voices, and I only stuck with it for maybe an hour before I switched to Japanese. So I haven't been switching back and forth, but at least that was my early impression. And I think especially the dialogue too, it is very kind of like old Englishly, like they're using these old archaic words and stuff, and so it feels kind of cheesy, and I
like
think some of that cheesiness is removed for me when I'm reading it and hearing it in Japanese than when I'm hearing it from these English actors, and some of the voice acting is not the best. So that's one disclaimer. The other one for me is there's a setting for the camera in the battles is by default it's like whenever you hit the right stick to move your camera around, it like shifts it 45 degrees.
Yeah.
And you can change that in the settings and it feels a lot better. So those are my other two disclaimers, is change those two settings, or at least try the English voice actors.
What are you shifting?
You
What's the other setting for when you move the camera? So it's 45
just
degrees,
like,
and what else?
It's not like it doesnn't snap at all. It's just like a free camera,
it's just like a free movement. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
that just feels a lot better. Yeah, so those would be my two kind of recommendations there.
How much would you say the amount of gameplay you start getting into versus the amount of story you're experiencing? Because in my first 2.5 hours, it was 80-20, 70-30, something like that. It has to shift, I'm sure.
Let me break it down a bit. So I'd say there's kind of 5 things that you're doing in this game. Okay, so one of them is just like story, cutscenes, and dialogue and stuff, and I consider that a phase of the game because it is a big part of it. Then there is, of course, the tactics gameplay, and then there's kind of 3 other things. So in between battles, you're kind of looking at the map and you're picking different stuff. You can go to your encampment and you can upgrade gear and do some auxiliary battles and stuff like that. So that's kind of another phase. And then the other part is you're going to do these exploration phases where you're set down in usually like a little town, and there's maybe, I don't know, 6 buildings or something and people around this town, and you're just running around. You go to talk to people, and it's almost like a point and click adventure kind of thing where you go talk to this one person, you get this line of dialogue information, then you take that information, take it over to this other person, and then maybe they'll give you some paper that you can write a letter to do this thing. And it's very point and click adventure where you're running around this town getting info and finding items, and there's even a couple shopkeepers you can buy stuff from. So that's another phase of the game. So once again, that's like you're getting some dialogue and stuff there, but at least you're getting to move around, and usually too those areas end up being the location of a battle. So it's kind of fun in that way too, to kind of scout out the landscape and look around and think, okay, I wonder what is the battle going to look like here? Where am I going to be in terms of the height advantage and whatnot? What kind of alleyways can I use? And then there's the 5th part of it too, where it's kind of related to that exploration phase, where you have these decisions, where you have the scales of conviction is what they call it. And essentially there's some decision that your party has to make. So the first one is pretty simple, where it's, and I forget if this is in chapter 2 or if this is, I think this might be at the start of chapter 3. So I don't know if you've seen this yet, but essentially the first decision you have to make is, do I want to go to, which country do I want to go to? Because you start in kind of Glenbrook, the kind of forest happy area, and you can go either to the desert or to the mountains. And that's your first decision. And so you have to talk to everyone in your party. You get their perspective. They share some information. You can try and sway them one way or the other. And then everyone kind of anonymously votes. And then you end up doing whatever that decision is. And that first decision is pretty like, it's very easy to sway people to your side. You're pretty much just choosing and getting to talk to people. But those decisions are really interesting later on in the game, and you do a few of them. At this point, I've done 4 of those sequences, and so that helps break up that thing too, where it is dialogue, but it's really involved, and they're really hard decisions. I'm excited for when if you do end up getting the full game and play further.
I
I
will.
just love to hear where you go, because even a couple podcasts I listened to, everyone else chose the separate route that I did, and I'm just
Yeah.
curious to hear like how that changes the course of things. Is there also is like that map where you can see? It's kind of like the Detroit Become Human thing, where you can see like, okay, I chose this thing and it branched me off this way, and you kind of
Mhm.
see where your decisions branch. So yeah, the game is kind of split into those 5 sequences, and while all of them kind of involve dialogue to some degree, you do at least get more gameplay in there. And then yeah, once you're in the encampment, you can do auxiliary battles if you just want to. If you just want to grind out some more battles, you can do that. But yeah,
Yeah.
there is a lot of story, so you should really buckle down and be ready to experience that and get invested in it, and hopefully you like the characters enough and those decisions by the end of the third chapter that you're hooked. But yeah, don't expect that like that is gonna waver, because it will keep it up. And I don't know how long this game is. Octopath was long as fuck. I never actually ended up beating it, because
I didn't beat
I
Octopath
got a good
either.
40 hours of it. I was happy, but I didn't end up seeing
Played
it all the way
less.
through. So I don't know if this is going to be the same thing where I bounce after an amount of time. I'd like to see it to the end. But yeah, that's kind of the breakdown of
How do you
what to expect for this game.
how do you feel about the battle mechanics? Because from I've just, like I said, I got one battle and then sat
Yeah.
through a lot of text, and I was like, man, I'm excited to get into more of this and kind of figure out how this is different from other tactics RPGs. Whether it be like a Final Fantasy Tactics or War of the Lions, or if it's more like a
Yeah, I'm guessing you've
Dissidia
played Final Fantasy
or
Tactics, right?
yeah, and the advanced ones, both of those. I
Okay.
love Final Fantasy Advance or Final Fantasy Tactics Advance specifically. I love War of the Lions and like original Final Fantasy Tactics, but
Sure.
I love giving a shout out to just the
Yeah.
like Tactics Advance specifically. I think that game has got such a cool style to it that it doesn't get enough love.
Yeah, for me, my experience mostly comes from Fire Emblem, where I've played like 8 or 9 Fire Emblem games, and I love that series a lot. Even though I don't love all of them, but I love the series, I would
Yeah.
say. I love Into the Breach. That's actually deep cut for the listeners. That's how me and Dante met. Is
Yeah.
through we were both streaming Into the Breach and hosting each other, and then we just kept in touch. That was like 2 or whatever years ago now. So
Been a while,
and
yeah.
that's
It's
like
really weird.
that might be the best. Like if you just want a tactics game and you don't want dialogue and anything, get Into the Breach, because it's like
Yeah,
15
that's the one.
bucks, and it's like
That
one of
game's
my
all-
favorite games of all time.
All
It's so
Dewey.
good.
There's only video game to play, no reading at all involved.
Yeah.
There's a little
The
bit.
dialogue is like people are like, oh
Minimal.
no, I died. Like it's very
Unit text.
Yeah, I've never played Final Fantasy Tactics though, and the most similar for me, because like this is very different from Fire Emblem in that you're controlling each character one by one, whereas Fire Emblem it's like, okay, it's your turn, control all 10 of your characters, take like 10 minutes to plan out what you're going to do on this turn, whereas this is one character at a time. And it reminds me of this game that probably no one's going to know of. It's called Tactics Arena Online, which was this online only tactics game that is now, unfortunately, the servers are dead, so you can't play it anymore. But check out a YouTube video, because this is a cool game. But essentially it had like the facing mechanics, where you at the end of your turn you decide which way you're going to angle, and you have greater placement with your characters. So that's kind of a similar game for me. But I think I haven't played Final Fantasy Tactics, but it seems much more in that realm of things than Fire Emblem.
Yeah, it seems like it has a little bit of both. It seems like it's definitely trying to lean into that story piece that Fire Emblem started to lean into more and more over the years as well. So obviously that's like a clear inspiration. But as far as the like fighting goes, they also are doing that. I don't remember this being in Final Fantasy Tactics, but it's also like I haven't played any of those games since they released. The last time I played Final Fantasy Tactics was when War of the Lions came out for PSP. For example.
That's wild,
yeah. So the thing that I noticed from that's also like a Fire Emblem pullover is when you have two teammates near each other and they're like doing this kind of like co-attack. They're both attacking at the same time because they're in near proximity. I don't remember that happening in Final Fantasy Tactics. But most of the fighting mechanics actually do feel like Final Fantasy Tactics. Like it's just pure aesthetic. Like it just looks like it. Like alone. But you're working more within a clear tile-based system instead of the arrows that like Fire Emblem will draw, even though like mechanically they work exactly the same. Fire Emblem, you also have like crits when you're attacking their back, right? Like that's definitely a part of that. That's something that's fundamental in all of these games.
Yep.
So like overall, like I've always found like Fire Emblem to be not that far off. It's just like the visual piece, and then all the Final Fantasy games had a job system, which this doesn't have.
Sure.
The thing that from a battle mechanic seems different about this is it has a lot of times in like, I don't know, Fire Emblem or Final Fantasy, you have a unit and they're good at doing this thing, right? And you can do that thing every turn. This game has almost like an energy system. Like it'll have like
this is the same. Like
pits.
Octopath had this very same thing where if you take a passive turn instead of attacking, then you build up this like little dial. I forget what they called in that game, AP maybe, and then you can do stronger attacks. Or if you do attack, then you get like 2 attacks at once. And this has a very similar thing where you can't just use an ability every turn, and it's not necessarily a 2-turn cooldown. You just kind of have this point that you get at the start of every turn, and if you save it, you can do better things later.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I may not have understood that, because that was something I was actually like concerned about when I got farther in. I was like, is this going to be a situation where like, all right, my healer healed last turn and that took 2 points and he only has 3 total, so I'm going to be sitting on 1 point and requiring 2 for this turn, so my healer just has to sit there.
Yeah, so essentially, you get 1 point every turn. So for the healer, the healer you get at the start of the game is called Gila, and you get other characters that have heals. But she has, well, at least she starts with 1 heal, and it uses 1 point. So every turn you can use it, no matter what. Later she'll unlock a bigger heal. You can heal multiple people at once, but it takes 2 points. So you can't necessarily use it every turn. But there is also, and I'm really excited to talk about some of the character specialization, but there is one character whose sole purpose is to give other characters points, to give them.
Oh, that's neat.
And I wish I knew the name of that thing off the top. There's so many words in this game, it's hard for me to remember. But yeah, there's a character who you'll put him on. If say there's a level where you just need to constantly get heals out, or just a mage to constantly spam spells, put that guy on your team, because he'll be able to just sit back and he'll just give people points every single turn. So there is specializations in that, but yeah, with most like characters that isn't. I don't know. Actually with some mages, they do have like stronger spells, and they can't do anything that doesn't cost 2. Like they could do a basic attack with their staff, but it's not really worth the using, putting them in risk.
Yeah.
So there is times where you're sitting back and just chilling. But here's another system, and there's a lot to break down here. But one thing I really like about this game that I thought was cool is if you don't take an action, and there's 2 things, so you can move on a turn and then do an action. So usually an attack or something. If you don't do either of those things, then your character will move up in the turn order. So very much like Octopath Traveler, there's a dynamic turn order where it defaults by speed. So whoever has like a highest speed stat, like so the assassin character Anna that you start with, she pretty much goes first every single battle. And then the higher your speed stat is, the more often you'll get to go. And it's not necessarily like everyone's going to have a turn before the next person goes. You might lap someone, so you might get 2 actions or 2 turns before someone else gets a turn.
Yep.
So there is that dynamic too. So if you let's say you are having a healer and they don't have any points to use their heal, if you don't move and don't attack or anything, then you'll actually go sooner. So it kind of in a way balances out, and it's cool too, because if you just move but don't use an action, you also move ahead in the turn order. And if you just use an action but don't move, you move slightly ahead too. So you can kind of go back and forth, and that also really helps with the pacing too. Or if you don't have a bunch of nothing moves, or if you do, you just hit plus and turn, boom, you move on to the next character, and then you actually get a bonus for not shifting them around. And it's kind of a risk reward too. It's like, I could move to a slightly better position tactically, but I'd rather have my turn a little bit sooner, because that might make the difference. So I'm just going to take this bad position. Maybe I'll get hit for it, but then I can go a little bit sooner and counterattack. So that's really cool. I think that
is cool.
They kind of did in Octopath. They transferred it over to a turn-based tactics game, and it works wonders. So that's really impressive.
Yeah, that like it's been in so many games, but that turn order system, when they really like use it seriously as a part of the mechanic and not just like, here's your way of keeping track. Like I feel like Final Fantasy X, outside of using like haste moves, like you weren't really seeing your turn order move all that much. It was kind of just a nice way to keep up with, oh my god, the boss is going to hit next turn, I need to make sure everybody's guarding or whatever. But then there's games like Trails in the Sky, which is like deep cut, once again, PSP games. I don't know what the hell I'm on today. I love the PSP.
I'm the same. I'm always thinking about the Game Boy Advance. Like just there's a constant
one makes more sense than
in
the
my
other
head.
still. Game Boy Advance, like arguably a better console, way more games on that than the PSP. Anyway,
yeah,
Trails in the Sky, fantastic video game series. has a phenomenal turn order system that is like key to some of the fights. Like you try and set up as many moments as you possibly can where you make it so the enemy literally can't move. It's a beautiful thing. You feel like you're breaking the game in such an amazing way. So I hope that's an experience you start to feel in the later game where like you actually get to manipulate the battle and the turns to your advantage just by your own strategizing.
Yeah, there is abilities that certain characters get that either move your character. You could, like, for example, one character has an ability that makes whatever friendly unit you choose have their turn right after you. So they could use an attack, and if you're that next character, you could make them right after you, and just like boom, they could have 2 turns right there. Or there's debuffs you can put on the opponent, so you can move someone back in the turn order as well. So you can mess around with that too. And I think the visuals of it are great. Like there's just a big bar along the bottom that shows, I think, around 10 people at a time, and you can quickly see if you hover over someone too, it highlights where they are in the turn order. So you can like really strategize around that. Like I think they really nailed that part of it. And that's cool because like as a guy who's played a million Fire Emblem games, and honestly I'm like, I love Three Houses, but I love it for its story and its characters. The tactics didn't really do it for me. Like it just didn't do anything new. It did like a couple slightly things differently than the past one, but I've just played so many of that. I'm honestly like just getting a bit bored of that system. So it's so great to have just a fresh feeling game. And yeah, I can't compare it to Final Fantasy Tactics because I haven't played that. So I mean, it's on my list, on my backlog. I want to go back to it, but it's just I can't just boot it up on my I don't know, Switch easily. If I could buy it there, I would, but it's a little bit harder to find right now. So
I'm sure a nice laptop would do just fine.
Yeah, I'm not a big emulator guy, but I could figure it out.
No, for sure. Yeah, it seems like I'm happy to hear you say that it does kind of take a different, or at least enough of a different approach to keep you engaged, because I think that was the big thing that I was worried about in those first few hours. I was like, all right, I don't know if this story will be engaging for me. And it seems like there's a lot of that. So I was really excited about my next gameplay point because I was like, man, I can get down with even the simplest of these types of games. But if it actually has like some weight behind it, and the gameplay of the tactics portion actually does something different enough that you actually find that part super fun, and like maybe you do go and do the auxiliary battles just to like have fun and build and like grind your party, right? Like then I'm much more excited to continue than I was, even though I'm going on a trip this weekend, so I was going to have plenty of Switch time devoted to it anyway.
When you're done the demo and you see this kind of scale of conviction decision you have to make, like it's a simple decision, and I already told you what it's going to be, so you already know what to expect a little bit. But if you think that's interesting, then just get ready, because like those decisions get harder and harder in a really good way that, you know, most games just have like an easy out, like, oh, this is the good guy thing. I'm going to choose this and I can be happy with this. But man, there is no right or wrong to these things, and they're captivating. But let's stick on the tactics.
Solid gray areas. I love it. Yeah, make me sweat.
It's so good. Let's stick on the tactics part for a bit, just to go through one thing at a time. Verticality plays a big part in this, and yeah, like you said, it's very obvious. Like it's much more. It's not necessarily realistic battlefields. Like there's just, you know, a very square piece of grass that's sticking up. You know, it's very obvious where the height differences are, which is good for tactics, maybe not so much for believability. But I think that as well, like these are kind of little dioramas of battle zones. Like they're not these massive sprawling Fire Emblem maps that have a logical, you know, hills and stuff like that. It's much more arcadey or video gaming.
That is something that is very Final Fantasy Tactics in a way that Fire Emblem is not. So Fire Emblem will give you these big maps, and you feel like you were chasing towards somebody. Like you spawn on one corner, they spawn on and you'll get tiles in the opposite corner, right?
That's one of my biggest criticisms of Fire Emblem, man, is like the first few turns and the last few turns of a Fire Emblem map are awful. And you just spend all this time going, you're moving 10 characters at a time. It doesn't really matter exactly where they go. It's just kind of wasting time. And that's why I like
you're moving pawns on a chess.
That's why I like that Into the Breach is literally like, here's the middle 5 turns of a Fire Emblem game, and it's only those, which are the most captivating turns. So anyway, but yeah, this game as well, since the maps are so small, you don't really get that. And then once again, since you can very quickly skip through characters, it doesn't really have that slog of being the janitor at the end of a level, or this kind of boring slog of setting up your characters at the start of a level. So that's really good. And the verticality is something that's like in Fire Emblem, it's in other tactics games, but I think it's used well here. And also
Yeah,
you have,
it's
like if you're an archer or something and you have a special ability that's a straight shot, and there's a wall in your way or one of your teammates, then you can't shoot through them. But maybe you have the lob shot and that can go over. So
are there
different things like that too.
units that have like specific bonuses at different levels, like Final Fantasy, and I think actually one of the first characters, like you hit 2 units away, like you get the spear guy or the like
Yeah, like
cavalry
archers have a greater damage and I think accuracy as well if they're at a high
at a
ground.
higher
Yeah.
level. Like that's the kind of stuff that was super key in
Hmm.
tactics games as well.
There's
Is there was like, I'm the only person who knows this game exists. Never mind. I was literally thinking of a board game. It is Scrabble, but you stack words up also.
Oh, that's cool. What's it called? I want to look
I
this
don't
up.
even remember. I just remember
Okay.
playing it as a kid. And
That
now,
sounds
yeah, I
cool.
don't even know why I brought it up. But the maps look just like that because you end up with like words that you stacked a letter on 3 different times to make a different word. So like
Hmm.
cure, and I should have picked a word that rhymes with more. Anyway, but yeah, you get the idea. So like it's this like topographical map, and like
Hmm.
or if anybody's played Horizon, it is exactly that game inside Horizon as well, right? Like that is
Yeah,
to the
very
T
much
the
so.
exact same
Machine
game.
Strike, yeah.
Yeah, Machine
Hmm.
Strike.
Hmm.
So yeah, I really do like having that kind of like topographical portion, that
Hmm.
3D chess part where you're like making sure all your units are properly in the right places. Whereas there wasn't a lot of that. You were more playing just the rock paper scissors bit in like a Fire Emblem.
Yeah. And there's like they really dig into that too. Like the assassin character will have an ability that lets her like vault a high wall. So normally like yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
if something's enough vertical difference in where you are now, then you can't just walk up there. But she has that ability. Of course, you start with like this archer who's on like a hawk or something, so she can obviously fly up there. But then there's also what I love is some of these specialized character classes where there's a guy who literally just builds ladders. So you just walk around, you build ladders up walls, and then he also has these spring traps. So if an enemy steps on it, it flings them like 5 slots over. So if you put
Oh,
that up
that's
on a
cool.
hill, then you can fling them off a mountain. They'll take bonus damage.
Oh, they take fall
And like
damage.
that's like what this character does. He just builds ladders. He like flings people off cliffs. And that's super. He doesn't really he doesn't do much damage if he hits someone with this little stupid hammer. But I just love that. Like that's such a cool idea to have this specialized class. And I don't use them on every map. If it's a flat level, I'm not going to use this guy. It's
He's
not really worth
useless.
it. But on this level I just was doing, where you start at the bottom of a canyon and there's enemies all around you on the top of this canyon. Super hard level. It took me like 3 tries. But the strategy ended up being, okay, I'm going to fly over to this cliff, build a ladder real quick, get my team, like my main squad up there, clear out the guys on that cliff, and then I'll just use this cliff as my advantage. And like that's really cool. I've not experienced that before in a tactics game, so
Yeah, me neither,
that's one thing
honestly.
that's super innovative for me.
Like that almost sounds like a unit in Into the Breach a little bit. Like stuff that's talking about actually like
Hmm.
moving somebody from different tiles,
Yeah,
or like changing the tiles around you. And just yeah, what a weird class.
I
Like if
know
they
it's
like,
great.
I would love to have just like, I don't know, Bob the Builder on my team to just like throw up ladders left and right. That sounds sick.
Well, it's cool too because that guy, he's just chilling in your camp and he's the smith. So he's just like there for a few chapters and then eventually there's some story reason why he wants to join the fight. But it's cool.
Yeah.
It's like this guy's just the smith. He's just building weapons and whatnot or upgrading your weapons. But then eventually, he joins the party and it makes sense that that's what he's doing. He wouldn't be some master Warhammer fighter guy. Like he's just a smith. So he just goes around building stuff and it's like
Yeah.
Team Fortress. I love that in Team Fortress there's just an engineer class who never interacts with the
I
opponents.
know,
He just
banging
sits in a
on
corner
turrets.
building stuff. Like that adds a lot to it. Another thing that's I've seen before, it's in Tactics Arena. I'm sure this is in Final Fantasy Tactics, is the directional facing. So after your turn is done, you choose
Mhm.
which way you want to face your
Yep.
character, and obviously you block more damage from the front, you take more damage, or people get easier crits on your back, and then your sides as well are more vulnerable. I don't know if there's going to be a class that maybe like their sides are more reinforced than their front or back is. I don't know, but I know there's one kind of tank character and you get an ability that makes him like stronger from the back as well, so you can't just get like easily crit. So I don't know how much they're going to play with that, but at least from a tactical perspective, it's interesting because you can specifically like obviously you want to face your opponent usually so that they deal less damage, but you can intentionally like turn to the side so that the opponent will be incentivized to go around to your
Around
hit
you.
you in the
Yeah.
back, and then you can like kind of catch them in a trap or something like that. Or there is characters that just throw down traps on the ground, so if you put that on someone's back and then you turn like you face the other way, then they're gonna just obviously they're gonna go for that because it's the most damage and they're gonna get hit by this hidden trap. So I really like that as well, and I thought it would be something that slows the game down a lot. Like most of the time you're not really gonna be doing it tactically, and that is true, but it at least is very quick and it doesn't feel to me like it's really slowing down the game much. So that's a positive thing.
Oh yeah, I was playing ending turns back to back. I would have two characters right next to each other, and I would put them butt to butt, so that
I love
couldn't
that.
neither of them could get backstabbed.
It's great. It's great. There's also, I mean, as I just kind of mentioned, but positioning is super important in these games. It's crucial, and I love that. I feel like, I mean, just in general, this game is hard, man. Like there is some levels that are a real challenge, and on the third turn, I'll be like, shit, I totally did this wrong. But another great thing this game does is if you lose a battle, whatever experience you gained, you can keep that and retry the battle. So you can like level up your characters without feeling like you wasted your time. Or if let's say you have a lot of pride and you want to say I can do this, you just load your save and then you can try it again. But I personally love that. Okay, I can get some bonus XP out of doing this again. This ability I unlocked halfway through the battle I can use from the start now. That's great, and that is just something that helps alleviate the need to grind, because there is those auxiliary battles. I haven't felt like I needed to do many of those yet because of that system. If I fail to level a couple times and I'm getting leveled up, it doesn't make it game-breakingly easy, but at least it gives me a couple levels, and I'm feeling that sense of progression, and I don't feel like I wasted 40 minutes doing this level. So that is like A+, amazing, love that. Fire Emblem, every game, copy that because it's great.
Part of me loves the nature of save scumming in games like this, but I only think I'd appreciate it if it saved turn by turn.
Right.
Like at that point, I just want to restart the whole thing over anyway if I know I fucked up that far back. So it's really nice for them to not make you suffer through that again and just like respect your time. Like Fire Emblem, I get it because they're like the death of a party member is like so impactful to that game, but even they have been starting to walk it back. You know what I mean? They've been adding
Three
a lot
houses,
of
you get
stuff.
like so many rewinds. Which I love because I don't want to spend. I think that's actually why I dipped out of like the two 3DS, or not Awakening, but the other two 3DS Fire Emblem games is because I was on some level and I spent 2 hours and lost one character who I really liked, and then I got to restart this level, and then I just never did, and that's a fault of the player as well. What's that?
Donald from Awakening with the helmet?
Awakening I did play all the way through, and I think Donald's the guy with the bucket on his head, right?
Yeah, I'm specifically just pulling that guy out of my ass because I know I would reset till the wheels came off if my boy with the pot on his head died, especially because he gets super strong at the end of the game.
He does, yeah. He's one of those recruit classes. But yeah, I think it's a great innovation to the game. And also, there's no permadeath in this game. So your characters can die, which I like because it just, once again, doesn't make me feel like I need to restart. This game doesn't have a rewind. So that's also a nice thing is like, well, no permadeath. And, weirdly with Fire Emblem, I feel like I'm kind of a purist. Like I've been playing since the Game Boy Advance. And so I feel like, I can't play with the casual mode. I have to play with permadeath on. But then I always reset anyway if a character dies. So it's like I'm not really getting the emotional impact of a character dying. And
only wasting my time.
Unless there's like a fringe case where I really hate a character. But then once again, then I'm not having the emotional attachment to them because I don't care if they die. So it's kind of like it's a flaw with me as a player, but also a flaw with the game in a way. And this just subverts that. But then there is certain levels where, there's a prince character on your party and the opponents are specifically trying to hunt him down and take him out. So in that level, you have to defend him. If he dies, it's a game over. And that's good. It makes sense from a story perspective. So
like objective-based failures make sense in games like this every once in a while. It can't just be a every single fight is a wipe the entire party out or your entire party gets wiped out. Like that's the only way that they can keep this shit interesting is if they do some objectives along the way. I guess that's probably my last like major question about this is do you find that there is enough variation or variety between the things that you are doing, or is the variety coming from the fact that you're doing like those 5 different things that you said?
I feel like the variety is good. I think that balance they strike between those 5 separate phases is much better once you're a little bit further in. And but I'm also like I am liking the story, so
That's
which
good.
is weird because I feel like so far, honestly, like those villains that you said that you're talking about is like these are just the generic bad guys, and I like they haven't really gone too far beyond that. It's some interesting things that they're doing at points, but I'm still not feeling totally captivated by them. But I'm still interested in the overall story of like, okay, we're in a really bad spot as a noble house here. How are we going to get out of it? And I
Yeah.
like the story beats like day by day of kind of the things
Nice.
we're doing. But yeah, the overarching story still is kind of encroaching on just generic in a way.
Generic.
So, but I don't know. I say that, but I'm also enjoying it. So I think maybe I feel like I'm just in a. I feel like I'm going to be in the minority on that take. But we'll
Okay.
see also how it evolves as the game goes on, and obviously your story decisions are going to impact things, and there is things there. Those decisions are great, but yeah, some of like just the stuff that's going to happen no matter what your choices are. I think some of that stuff, I don't know, so
Well,
far isn't totally captivating.
if it's anything like all of the other fantasy-based tactics things, you said 15 hours in, you are in the first act.
Yeah,
Still, as far as that works, right? So like this
yeah.
thing could go places. The only reason I asked that was because I feel like that's been the struggle of games like this pretty consistently over like since their inception, since like Tactics Ogre and shit like that. Like
Mm-hmm.
it, it's either well, primarily it's just been like fight
Mm-hmm.
over and over again, and it gets pretty exhausting after a while. And this sounds like it's trying to break it up, and I think that was the reason that Fire Emblem ended up going that route too, is because I'd say those original ones are exactly that. Even though the fights are great, it maybe gets a little too much
Oh
at
yeah,
certain parts.
Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, one of my top 5 favorite games of all time.
Brutal
I've
though.
skipped every story beat ever. I've played the game like 5 times. I do not know what's going on because it is so uninteresting. I like the individual characters or some of the
Yeah.
conversations they're having, but that overarching war kingdom versus kingdom story, I don't care. I don't care about
Right.
that. It does not
Well,
catch
like
me.
that's the piece though, like where I maybe fall off of these games pretty often is like I will just get 100 or so battles in and be like, I have had my fill. I have done enough of
Mm-hmm.
these battles, and the story is not engaging enough for me to want to see the
Yeah.
end. I have done enough of this puzzle game that I like playing. Kind of
Yeah.
is how I
Yeah.
end up looking at it. Whereas, like, I'm happy to hear that there is a large story. I don't think I was happy to see how heavy-handed it was in the beginning of the game. Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe give me a few tutorial battles back to back before you sit me down for an hour and a half to
Yeah.
watch a movie. But if this story ends up becoming engaging in any capacity, it's a nice breather from spending all of your time doing the battles as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, if they can strike that balance nicely as the game proceeds, I actually think that's going to be an amazing thing for me personally. Like I need the break. I can't do back to back battles without just getting like a little fatigued.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
Cool.
so I can only comment on that to some extent since I'm only as far as I am in, but I will report back and let you know how that goes. But I just wanted to talk a little bit more about those decisions you're making. So that I
Oh yeah.
mentioned that first one is where you're choosing which kingdom to go to first, and I'm really curious, just based on what happens in the story, like directly after that. I am so curious to replay the game and see what happens if you go the other way, because I
Well,
feel like
which way did you go? Which way did you go?
I went to the mountains.
Damn it!
went
I
up.
want to go to the mountains.
Okay, I feel like most people are like, the desert looks really cool. It's exotic. It's this place of
Yeah.
mages and this holy place. And I mean, it looks maybe more captivating. But I was like, story wise, for me, you're the character. You're rather than Octopath where you can choose any of these 8 characters and they're all just kind of this ragtag crew. In this game, you're kind of playing from the perspective of Sarah Noah, who's the kind of the inheritor of this noble house. And then you kind of have this squad of main characters, and then you get other side characters in there, obviously. But you're being set up an arranged marriage with this character from the Mountain Kingdom. So I'm like, well, of course I want to go up there. I want to see what her place is like and vibe with her family a little bit. So to me, that made, like, from story perspective, I'm like, oh, well, I have to go there. But yeah, just from what happens after that, like, I really am curious what happens if you choose to go the other way and how the main events unfold. And the next one, I don't want to spoil these specifics, but another decision you have, I'll say, is someone in your party, you can choose to sacrifice them, and obviously sacrificing them would be to benefit your team and your kingdom, or you can try and protect them, and you might be going down a more precarious path. And man, that decision, because it's like, this is someone in your party, you've maybe not just spent points to invest like upgrading them, but also you like the character. That character is like best friends with Sarah Noah, so obviously it's like, oh, I can't. How can I do that to my best friend? Like that would hurt. And
The
that,
needs
yeah,
of
man.
one over needs of many.
Yeah, exactly. That
Go in
decision.
selfish mode every time.
That
Protect the
decision
homie.
is hard, man. That decision is super hard. And once again, like I really am curious what happens if you go the other way. So I forgot to do this with that first big decision, but every other one since I've made a separate save. So I don't know if I don't know if I'll replay the whole. Well, I'll have to see it when I'm at the end, or if I do how far I get before I jump off. If it is 100 hours long or something, maybe I just go back and see what some of the immediate repercussions would be instead of replaying the whole game. But yeah, let's without spoiling what they are. All those decisions have been really tough for me to decide, and one of them that I thought was super interesting is generally there's like 7 people in your party that are going to be making these decisions, and usually at the start of each sequence it's like 3 of them are on one side, 3 on the other, and one person's like completely undecided. And then you go around, you get some info from the townspeople, which I think is cool. You talk to like you're just the citizens of your kingdom and you find out what their take is, and maybe they'll give you some bonus information. You can take that to these people and try and convince them one way or the other. And was kind of feeling once again in a gray area, but I was like, okay, I'm gonna choose this. I don't love the decision, but it's a great decision because I'm just not like, oh, they're both so hard decisions to make. And so there's the 3 people who were already convinced. I'm like, okay, I don't need to convince them. The other 4 people, I was like, hey, here's my case. We should do this thing because of reason X, Y, and Z. And after all that, when the anonymous votes came through, they all ended up going the opposite way of me. So what I wanted as a player and as the Lord kind of ruling this thing, they all ended up choosing the other way. And from a story perspective, I wasn't mad like, shit, that's not what I wanted to do. It's like, my team chose this with all the information at hand, and I'm going to go down this pathway now. And once again, now I'm super curious. Okay, what if I get that dialogue right and I go the direction I intended to go? I really want to see what happens. And that, to me, was really cool that I only had so much power in this situation. And, you know, their standpoint is based off of the decisions you're making in the game. It's hard for me to say to what degree, but oftentimes you're making a decision or saying something, and it's like, your convictions have been strengthened, you know, like you've made some decision that affects how your people think about you and who you are as a character. So obviously many decisions I made led them to that point where they were kind of against me in this one decision. But anyway, I thought that was super cool, and I love these decisions. They're very captivating, and yeah, man, they're not easy to make, and that's what makes them so good.
That like particular instance leaves me wondering how often the game is giving you the guise of choice, and that your party is like, we're still going this way though.
Like I said, you can go on this map and see where it breaks.
Oh, and you can see the branch points. That's cool. That's
all
just
all
like,
those points do have a branch, so it's
okay.
I'm fairly confident that you can take them either way. And honestly, I'm super curious how long this game is. I haven't looked up how long to beat, and I haven't heard anyone who's beaten it yet how long it took for them, because yeah, from my experience with Octopath, it was like I put 40 hours into it. I heard it was 80 hours long. I think I was out before I knew how long it was. But when it comes to triangle strategy, like it seems like, I wonder if this is a more tight-knit game where it's not as long, but then it's, you know, each of these decisions is really fleshed out, or if it is still like 80 to 100 hours and you still have all these decisions. Like that's an insane amount of content going on there, depending on how much these decisions change things. But from my perspective, they seem like they change a fuck ton, and the map isn't that big. Like I feel like I've kind of already been to all the major destinations. Obviously I haven't seen all the battlefields, the individual battlefields, but I feel like I've seen all the major places. So I wonder if it's just this kind of more contained experience. So I don't know. I know that's kind of a nebulous thought, but that's kind of where I'm one thing I'm wondering for myself personally.
I do love the fact that they are letting you know where the division points are. That is very visual novel. That is a thing that I have enjoyed, and most of the visual novels I've played, the ones that do give you the opportunity for lots of different choice, they will give you this branching tree, and you can actually like go straight to those points, so you can kind of choose whatever the opposite thing is, and it'll like run you down that path. That's cool. Does it? You might have answered this. Does it make it so that I can just you save at those? You've saved manually at those points. It doesn't give you an option to just like click on that part of the thread and go back to that point or anything like that.
I don't think so. Maybe when you're done the game or something, but for right now, I'm just like, before I start convincing people of one way or the other, I just make a save right there after I've gained all the information I could, or at least the information I could find. So that's kind of what I've been doing so far. And
if it's not there, that's a killer way to do a new game.
I guess I recommend doing the same as well.
Oh, You got a little.
Sorry,
quick
I think you glitched out for a second. What
Yeah,
did you
same.
ask?
No worries. No worries. Yeah, no, I was saying, hopefully that's like a good way to do it. Like a new game plus is like just give you that tree back and say, hey, use your current units, and you can go back to any point in the game. No, that's cool. That's a really like pretty distinct feature from other styles of game that I'm not used to seeing in something like this. So that's a cool way to do that for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I can only speak to a certain degree. Like maybe the game is very linear and it is like the Fallout thing where it's like you are saying, you know, yes or no, but like whenever you say it, like ends up being the same thing anyway. Like maybe that is the case. Based on the branch, it seems like some choices maybe flow back into each other, and then other ones do, you know, spread out into this massive tree. So with one playthrough under my belt, I can't really comment on that. Let's take a quick ad break. We'll come back. I have some more things to say about this game. But yeah, it's 50 minutes in, so let's do a little quick ad break. Okay, and we are back. We were just talking about the story. Okay, here's another thing, and I'll say this without talking about the specifics, but you have those decisions. Here's another thing that I thought was interesting. In one of the levels, you're kind of set up to defend this area, and they're setting it up as it's going to be really hard. And this level is really hard. It took me like 3 tries. But one of the things you can do to make it easier is like this town has set up this very barbaric defense system where essentially they have rigged the houses to just spill out oil and light on fire. And this is like a last-ditch effort. Like, we're going to get fucked up here. We have to do this. And so the first time I did the level, I'm like, hey, I don't want to destroy any of these houses. Like, I want to keep these people's homes intact. So I'm not going to do that. And it felt impossible. It felt like there's no way I can do this unless I grinded a bunch, or, you know, maybe if I was way better at the tactics or I had the right team. Sure, it could have been possible, but it felt like it was going to be really hard. And so I ended up doing the level again, and I tried to preserve some of the houses. So I think there's like 3 separate things you can burn down, and I ended up burning down 2 of them, and that really helped, and I was able to beat the level. And like that's a great decision too, because you've spent a lot of time in that town. You've been in those houses before.
Okay, you actually have attachment to these people. It's not like, oh, let me protect the town. Oops, they're all dead. Moving on with the story, nothing happened.
Exactly. And then later you go back to that town and you can talk to the woman. She's like, man, this really sucks that my house got burned down. And with this one lady too is like, oh, if I knew my house was gonna get burned down, I would have taken all my family mementos. I would have brought them with me. And I'm like, first of all, I think I thought we knew this was a plan, that like maybe your house would get burned down, but like you didn't gotta hit me with the mementos line. Now I feel so bad about this. Yeah. So once again, like that wasn't one of those.
My house burned down now also.
That wasn't one of those decisions that was between my team. Like that was just individually I had to make that call on a situation by situation basis, and like that hurts. I feel that, and I think they did a good job of making those consequences feel meaningful and impactful. So once again, like there is little things like that within the game as well, and really that's the only like major one I've seen like in terms of the actual gameplay so far. But I'm sure there's going to be some more of that, and I hope so, at least, because I thought that was another good moment.
Well, it sounds like the story and the kind of the way they're delivering the story actually ends up being a pretty important piece. Then you actually have stakes to some of your fights, despite the fact that like your characters aren't dying necessarily or something like that. You actually have characters that are still being affected in the world. That's huge. Definitely. Like I said, like in these other games, it just is a nonsensical moment. You just wander into a town. Town happens to be on fire. You kill the goblins or the opposing force. And that's that. You don't think about the people that were in the burning building or had evacuated or anything. None of that matters. It's just a means to an end. So that's cool. Like there's world building and like they're establishing people, and like your best friend has to live because or whatever has not go to prison or whatever the hell's going to happen to him. Because you have to choose him over a town, and I'm going to choose the homie. Every time.
I mean, but you might get convinced the other way because of what your people are saying. But that's my ride or die. Captivating.
It's the blonde guy on the horse. I know it, and I won't lose him.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You got to keep him alive. Now, one kind of so that was a pro. Here's a con with that is so you based on your decisions as well. It seems like you're going to get different companions, and that was something in the marketing as well. Like whatever you choose, like you're going to get different people. Like let's say I don't know if you choose like let's say you're very by the book and you're just a numbers guy and you're not really
Mm.
thinking about the emotions of people, like maybe someone will not want to join your party because they're like, well, fuck that guy, like I don't want to be part of his team and stuff like that. So for example, in the first, when you make that decision, you go up to the mountains, there's a character there who's been a crucial part of my team, and he's like involved with some kind of banditry going on there, and you
Some
can get
bad
him to your
eggs.
team. But yeah, that's one thing where it's like, if you go the other way, do they shoehorn some reason why that guy like exists in this other place instead? Or I'm
Mm.
guessing based on what I've seen is that you just like would not have access to that character, or maybe you can get them later on. But man, like that guy has been just an anchor of my team, and I've had him on
Yeah.
pretty much every level. So that's really cool if you get different companions. But one problem is these side characters. So you have Sarah Noah, and then you're kind of 7 main people. And maybe other people join that main squad and make those decisions with you. But so far, the side characters, it seems like, there is a lot of them. But because of that, they aren't really doing much with them. And it's kind of a bummer for me. I was hoping that these other characters you recruit would be involved in these decisions. Or, like, for example, like you go to this one area and in this one character's backstory, it's that same zone, and that's where he's introduced, as he's did like this battle here like 30 years ago, and like he doesn't come into the scene and have any dialogue, or hey, like, oh, I was in this fight and here's the side that ended up winning is because they were up here, whatever. So these side characters, because they're all optional, it seems like they didn't really involve them in the main story in any way, and
Yeah.
that's a real bummer for me. There is some that, like, once they get, like I said, the blacksmith, he becomes a party member. So it's like he's involved enough because he's in the encampment. You can also the barkeeper in your encampment, she can join your tribe or your team, and then like other shopkeepers, they can become party members that fight with you. So they kind of have some story. But there's other characters that seem like they get their introduction and that's it. So I don't know if there's going to be like each character gets their own side quest that you can do later on. But so far, that's something that's a real disappointment for me because these characters aren't getting
Yeah.
the time to shine. And some of them I really like based off their introduction, but then there's just no other meat on the bone there. So that's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, that's something that I'm like actually surprised that happened, considering some of the complaints about Octopath Traveler. Despite the fact that
Yeah.
who knows who made this video game still. So
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe they can't really take the like positive or negative
At
like
least some people made Octopath. So there you go.
right. Well, like yeah, because I feel like that was my big problem with Octopath. I didn't give a shit about any of the characters in that game. Like
Yeah.
there was a larger story that was happening that became more interesting than any of these people independently.
They've
And
got
that's been
good
a
hooks,
problem.
but then they don't
Yeah.
dig into them in a way that is
Yeah.
captivating. And that's why I think, I mean, among with some other like level balancing issues I had with that game is why I ended up dipping. But that's totally true, and that was one criticism for sure. Was just like, where's the travel banter? That's this
Mm.
game, like Octopath Traveler, is just like it's half the title. It's a travel game. You're cruising around, you're doing this big expedition together, but then there's just not a whole lot of scenes where the characters are communicating with each other. And once again, it's hard because you could start with I started with Tressa, who's in
Naughty,
the bottom
right?
right
Yeah.
corner of the map, and then when my roommate played the game, he started with his other character who was on the
Mm.
whole other side of the map. So obviously, it's hard to write all that in there. But if you're gonna open up that bottle, you got to kind of go through with it. And
Oh yeah,
it
you
seems
gotta
like once
commit.
again they're not really doing that here. So I don't know if that changes if you can like promote people to the council on your team or whatnot. But
It's just
yeah,
it's a thing that has been done so many times in JRPGs that you would figure that by now they would have been like, we can't do that again because people don't
Mhm.
like it. Like this is some of the best RPGs of all time still have these issues that are attempting to do this. So like your Suikoden's of the world or your Chrono Crosses, right? Like Chrono
Mhm.
Cross is notorious for having a bunch of side characters. Like we have only over 40 characters that can go in your party, and all of them are dog shit. They're just random dude number like letter A.
yeah,
Like, I don't know. It's just like I'm hoping that one of these days, like, yeah, make some sort of like varied characters that I can get. Like, are there's probably quite a few you can get in this game, depending on like what routes you go. Hopefully it does switch up that like you end up with a different character, like maybe that guy who is like fundamental to your team. If I went another route, I got somebody else who's completely changed the way that I engage in battles, and also I think is like fundamental to my team, right?
Yeah.
But I want to care about them outside of them being the tanky guy or the guy that does the most damage. You know what I mean? Like, let me give a shit about them. Like, otherwise, if you're not gonna let me do that, let me customize the character. One or the other. Like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna give me random generated guy number one, let me like change his hair color and create
Sure.
my own personal attachment to him. Don't give him like generic backstory and then expect me to give a shit when something bad happens to him down the road. Like, I think that's my like it's always a concern going into these games that like, all right, am I going to play this and it be just a virtual way for me to kind of play chess in a sense, or like just a nice fun strategy game that I will literally just treat like a puzzle game, or do I actually want to invest myself in these characters? And Three Houses was fucking phenomenal at making me caring a ton about those characters. And I wonder how much that game's story being something I thought was engaging might ruin something like this for me. And I hope not. I want to come in like positive. Like I said, the first hour and a half of dialogue was a little rough, but like if they take off from there and they balance it out with enough other stuff to do, I think I'll be in for the long haul. Like I genuinely, like I said, you could the most bare bones tactics game. I'll still enjoy it. And I'll still want to play through to the end as long as it's not just like bashing me over the head with battle after battle.
Yeah, I mean they nail it. Like I said, with that kind of the smith who can build ladders and stuff. Like they nail it in that regard of making characters have unique classes. And so, depending on the mission, I'll swap this guy and swap this guy out. And there's really only like 3 or 4 characters to me that are like anchors. Like I gotta have them on every mission. But for the most part, other than that, I'm switching people out depending on the use of them. So that's cool. I like to have that decision making in Fire Emblem. I don't usually get that. Like I maybe swap a couple characters out, but like you pretty much got the same main squad. So I like that that's the case here. And there's not like you usually got to have Sereno on. He's your kind of main guy, but if you do the auxiliary battles and stuff, you can take him off, and maybe there's other battles where you can as well. But
do the people in your do you have characters in your stock at any point? So say you have 7 characters on the field, do you have an 8th character who's just chilling?
What do you mean?
Not in a battle. He's not in a battle. He's not in the battle. He's just like on the bench for the fight. Is that a thing in this?
So I think I know what you're asking. So right now I think
you had 7 people who could be on a field, but you have 10 people. So you had to choose 7 people out of those 10 to go on to the fight, but then you have these 3 other people who are just sitting on the side.
Yeah, I think I'm up to 20 characters in my party now, and like most levels, you're gonna have between 8 and 10 people that you can have. So there is a lot of people sitting on the side.
Do they get experience?
No.
Or do I have to do your party members who are in battle get experience, or is it only the people who have killed units?
It's only the people who have killed units. Well, not killed. Like if you have a healer and they're healing,
damaged
they're getting
units.
Experience.
Damaged units or healed units.
Or like you were saying too, how if you position someone where you kind of skewer them in, and you're surrounding someone and you get like a follow-up attack, both characters will get experience for that, not just the person who initiated the attack. But yeah, so for the people who are sitting on the bench, so maybe there's someone who has a very niche skill that you're only going to use like once every 4 missions. They're going to be under-leveled. So like I said, if you fail battles and you retry, like you're going to keep experience. That's a good solution to that. But then you also do have the auxiliary battles, which are pretty quick. Like the auxiliary battles, from what I can tell, they're really small. So you can kind of get a lot of attacks in. And once again, like you can just throw someone in the rough there, and if they die, they don't die, right? They just kind of get knocked out for a bit. So you can still get some experience. But yeah, that could be an issue, I think, is what you're getting to. Is
it's just
someone's
personal.
on the bench for a while.
I have this thing. It's happened since like Pokemon, where like everyone has to be the same level. Like all the time. And obviously like your MC who's in every fight is always like way jacked compared to everyone else. But then like
it's hard because the games are balanced around the characters who, they're supposed to be this level, and then it only takes a couple battles before someone's become obsolete unless you grind them out. Or if they're a very unique character who sits in the back and doesn't have to get one hit by like the boss who can go up and smack them in the head.
I get stressed out. I'm like, there's going to be some story reason where I have to bring in this guy and he's level 2 and everybody else is level 40 and I'm fucked now forever because I never leveled up Greg. Yeah,
I mean, so far, at least with like the level, I don't know how they choose it, or if it's a set thing when you get a new side character in your team. I don't know if it's like the average level of your team or something, but every time I've got a new character, they're at the appropriate level. And so far, they're to the point I'm at. Like I said, I am switching characters out. There's only a couple that I've only used, I think, once, and even they are not that far under leveled. Like they're still usable if I wanted to put them on. They might kind of get like, I know I have to be smarter with positioning of them. I can't have them in the front lines, but they are more healer characters anyway. I for some reason have a ton of healers, so I'm naturally going to bench a couple of them every level. I only need 1 or 2.
Right.
But yeah, so far, like I said, 16 hours and no one is obsolete yet. So that is
Fully
at least something
neglected.
good. And I've only done like 2 or 3 auxiliary battles, and that's usually because I get some new character who's a weird class, and I don't really understand how they work, so I just want to try them out. So it's not like I'm going in there to grind experience on anyone in particular either. So I haven't felt the need to do that. So if you're wanting to do more battles and whatnot, then I think naturally your characters would be a higher level than mine.
It'll be like my main character will be level 70 and everybody else will be level 20. That's just how it operates, because I'll just rotate the lowest character into the highest character slot.
Yeah.
So the highest character level is on the bench now, the lowest character is in his space, and it's just this constant rotation until everybody's under level.
Yeah.
I looked up how long the game is. Do you want to know, or do you want to keep it a secret?
I don't want to know right now.
No worries. Sorry to ask.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I was curious, pleasantly surprised.
Because I'm super into it right now, and
yeah,
like I right now with my current momentum, like I'm gonna keep going with this game for a while yet. Like I said, like I'm really torn with right now with Elden Ring in this, because I'm loving both of them so much, and I don't want to put either one of them down. And this next week, I'm actually going to go out of town. I'm not going to have Elden Ring. So once again, just like you with your trip, I'm going to be going hard on the triangle strategy train. So I'm going to be playing a lot more of that than I will.
It's crazy. I'm going to do something like genuinely fun, and part of my brain is like, but I won't have Elden Ring.
Yeah.
It's like a real issue in my life that I'm like somehow started prioritizing this game as part of my life.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that soon. No, it's okay. I just have a few more points here. One, I think the tutorialization in this game is great. They get everything like basic out of the way early, and it makes sense. And part of it is I've played a ton of the games in this genre, so it's hard for me to think of it as someone who hasn't. But it seems like they have a good amount of pop-ups information, and then they sprinkle things in, like that. For example, that tooltip I got later on where it said if you don't move a character or don't use an action, you move higher in the turn order. Like they let you play the game for a few hours before they introduce that, because it's not a huge impact. You don't need it immediately. They don't want to overflow you with stuff, and they do a good job of staggering information in a way that to me didn't feel like, oh my god, you're just leaving out this essential thing,
or the opposite, where they're just like, you're drinking out of a fire hydrant in the first level and they're like, good luck.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's such especially with tactics or strategy games in general, like that is something they struggle with usually, is putting way too much information up top. But I think this game does a great job of introducing its mechanics at a good rate. In terms of the upgrades and RPG element, like you said, there isn't a job system in this game, but I like this. There's kind of these badges you can use to upgrade a character to the next thing, but it's not like you're choosing a path like Fire Emblem either. Like they're just linearly going up, or you can individually upgrade their weapons and like individual stats. And obviously when they level up, they're just getting like +1 strength or something like that. And then there's,
but you can like specifically dial in every single character that way. Like you'll upgrade all their stats, or their stats just upgrade.
No, so each character has the same like 10 stats, like HP, strength, magic, like that stuff. But then in there, each character has an individual skill tree in a way, and so they'll each have like a weapon upgrade, which are usually they're like very specific materials that you're usually going to get one every level. So at the end of every level, you can upgrade one person's weapon. Usually it's something like that, and so be like, this one character, like the archer characters need like spider silk, so you'll get one spider silk after this level, so you can choose which archer you want to upgrade, and kind of goes around. The magic characters have their own thing, whatever. But then each character has they have like 3 rows of upgrades they can do on their weapon, or not just their weapon, their stats in general, and it's different depending on the character. So one character might be like, you can choose to upgrade their luck, or maybe like a mage character, you usually get like, I can upgrade their physical defense, and every character has just straight up damage. But so it's kind of tailored to each character, and some of them are interesting. It's like, I don't know why I would need this stat with this character, but it's probably related to some ability they get later on, or when they upgrade their class, like they become some big badass magic damage character. And so I have that option later on, but I'm not going to upgrade it yet. And all of those, like in that first tier, everything uses the same, same materials to upgrade it. So you can, once you have the materials necessary for a certain character, you pretty much just choose, okay, which one of these things do I want? It's simple. It's very easy at a glance to see everything, and it's not a slog to look through all of it. Also, at the top of the screen when you're in the upgrade menu, you can see It's like just shows a little picture of all your character, and it highlights the one that you have the materials enough to upgrade something.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah, so you can
that's
just
really
like
cool as
go
well. At
really
a
through
glance,
them.
you can tell, okay, I have these materials and I can upgrade one of these 4 characters with it. Which one do I want to choose? It's simple. It doesn't seem like it's super in depth that you're specking out your characters Diablo style, and each you can each character's one class can turn into 100 different things. But I like that because you have a bunch of different specialized characters, and once again they have these specialized skill trees, so it works well. There's equipment as well that you can kind of put on different characters. Like I said, visually it's really good. I mentioned that Smith character has other good unique classes. I've mentioned this stuff.
Speaking of visuals, that was something that I loved. Because I loved Octopath Traveler as well, but I think there was something coming from this to Octopath Traveler that I didn't notice in Octopath Traveler, and I also did not notice in the Live Alive trailer. Like, these are technically different companies, I guess, or
well, they're all Square
using
Enix,
the
I
same,
think, right? And they're all
the same publisher,
engine, so
and they're all using the same engine. Did you notice a lot of anti-aliasing on this compared to Octopath Traveler? I feel like Octopath Traveler, when I looked at it, every single sprite looked like mad crisp, like literally, like they were like pixel perfect characters, and like looked like just straight up up-resed almost voxel 16-bit art. Whereas this one, I feel like there is just this smoothing feature on everything. It was a thing to the point that I actually like went into the menu and tried to see if I could turn the aliasing off, which was like never a thing in a Switch game. And I messed around with the depth of field, because they do allow you to turn that on and off, which is cool because sometimes I like it in games, sometimes I don't. I left it on in this one. But I was really hoping that there was a way for me to like, it must just be how they're handling shadows this time around or something. But there is definitely not as crisp of a line. You don't get that like pure, I can count the pixels feeling as much as you do get this kind of like nice. It's aliasing. It's aliasing. If people know what aliasing is, it's aliasing. Like, I was just surprised.
I don't know. To me, it looks identical to Octopath, and I also I played Octopath at launch, so it's been a minute.
It's been a while. Yeah, and
so
that
to me, I see what you're talking about for sure, but I haven't noticed it, and it's not bothering me at all. So yeah, I don't know what else everything to me, like the water effects and like just the buildings, the lighting, kind of all looks the same. The characters look the same. So to my eye, it looks the same. But I think I can see what you mean, because I think some of the characters don't look super crisp at times. But for me, in my mind, it's like, oh, this is exactly like Octopath. So
the difference too is because like Octopath Traveler, you would go into these fights and it would just be like this sprite pane. This pane with like the sprites of the enemies and the sprites of the characters, and they were a little bit closer. So maybe I'm just seeing that in my head when I'm thinking of the battles. And honestly, I don't know. I'm looking at a picture of Octopath Traveler right now, and I do feel like that might be just a little bit crispier.
Okay. Yeah, I
just wonder why. Maybe not. Maybe not.
I'm glad.
I don't know. I'm looking at some of these different. The point that would like make it super obvious to me every time is when I saw it when there was a text bubble on the screen, because the text bubble had no aliasing on it.
Okay.
So I would like immediately it became apparent that there was aliasing on everything else.
That's interesting.
Didn't bother me. Just something I noticed.
I think it looks great. Maybe one thing is that in Octopath, there is a lot of like the enemy design's really fun. I think the bosses are designed really cool from a gameplay perspective, but they also just fucking nailed it visually. And in this game, the enemies are much more generic. You're pretty much just always fighting soldiers. I haven't fought any monsters or anything yet. So, and it's not really that kind of game. It's not. There is magic, but there isn't, gargoyles and golems and all this stuff in there. Yeah. So it is more grounded as the story makes it seem as well. And so I mean it's hard to criticize the game for not having gargoyles or something, but I that was something I really liked, is just looking at these. Obviously the visuals are great, but then like they just had cool designs in Octopath, and you're not really getting that here. The character art looks great. Once again, these kind of hand-drawn portraits that look great. They look the same as Octopath. My one criticism visually is the map is kind of like a war table sort of aesthetic, and I think it doesn't look very good. I don't even know what I want from it instead. It's cool when you're moving along the map, you see around. What's that?
you have like a little like Catan piece.
Sure. Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't move. It's just there, and then you go into a battle, and then it's in a different place. I want it
Well,
to. I want it to
sometimes it
move
does.
around.
Sometimes
Like
it does like
it's
shift
sliding
around.
around.
Like they
Yeah.
will move it.
Okay. All
But
right. I just didn't
it
see
does look pretty. It just looks super bland, and you do spend a good amount of time like on the map every between battles, clicking
Yeah.
on stuff and whatnot. So, and I like that they went with a kind of war table sort of aesthetic
I
that
like
fits
that visual
fits
in
your
most games.
yeah, and
Yeah.
thematically it makes sense too because you're kind of planning your next attack. You're keeping an eye on enemy troops and where they are. But yeah, it just does not compared to the other just art assets in this game. It's pretty weak. So that's one thing. Um, for the music, so like I said, it's a different composer. Octopath has easily a top 10, maybe a top 5 level soundtrack for me all time video games. Like it is
What?
amazing. I love the soundtrack of
Gotta-
Octopath. It's long as fuck. It's like 3 hours
I'm
and
just
like
gonna
most of
bump
those
it.
songs
Bet
are
you it's on
amazing.
something.
My video game music playlist is just filled of Octopath songs. I love it.
Oh, amazing!
So it's a
Is it on
different
Spotify?
It is, yeah. The whole thing's
Oh,
on
cool.
there.
I'll have to give it another listen.
Oh, definitely. It's great. So this game, different composer, Akira Senju is the composer. It still has a similar vibe in some ways. It's not quite as good as Octopath, but that's like I'm saying. Like this is Octopath is one of the best of all time. It's hard to compare to that. Like we're in the top echelon for me. But the soundtrack in this game is great. I love the once again, the war table, like the music that plays when you're just at the map is really good. It gets me hyped up. It's kind of got these like you're ready to march into battle kind of vibe. It's really good. The music that plays when you do those auxiliary battles is really cool. The battle themes and all that. It's really good music. I love the soundtrack as well. It's not on Spotify yet, unfortunately. I hope it comes there eventually because I would love to add some of these tracks to my playlist as well. But yeah, not quite to the level of Octopath, but it's a great soundtrack on its own merit.
Amazing. Well, like if it's a top 10 of all time and they were able to even keep up, that seems like a pretty good soundtrack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I will have to
complain with that.
I will pay attention when I'm going through this and I'm queuing up some Octopath Traveler music for later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
so I need to remember that was something I played a lot of Octopath Traveler on mute.
That's
a travesty.
Big mistake. The theme
I didn't beat that game either. I probably got like
20,
25 hours into that game, but like I definitely was just playing on my Switch, like just roaming around the house and not being too loud.
That's
remember.
Fair. That's fair.
So
I think that's pretty much all of my notes. I don't think for this game I need to get too spoilery with the story. I would like to maybe come back to that when I'm further in or something, but yeah, like I said, man, I am in love with this game. It's 16 hours in, and I'm just gliding through it, and I can't wait to play more. And I'm excited. Yeah, I'm gonna be out of town. Not gonna have my Xbox, but I'm super happy because it's been a while since I've really had a Switch game that's super captivated me. So it's fun to be back in there. Yeah, I love this game.
No, that's genuinely exciting.
Like
I came off of it very lukewarm, right? Like just no feeling on which way it was going to go, but knew I was like going to have to dive in and really invest to enjoy it because of how much story was involved. But if it continues to engage you and it does cool stuff with the combat and continues to do cool stuff with the combat, I'm definitely down to kind of see where this journey goes and just, I don't know, really dig into the I don't know. Yeah, like there just seems like it seems like there's like a lot of robustness to the game that you don't see in that first like 3 hours. Like it's gonna expand upon it quite a bit.
I mean, at the top, I said, if you're just looking for this strategy, go elsewhere because this game has a lot of story. That's not because the strategy isn't the strategy is amazing. It's so captivating. I think I explained why, but it's just because there is also so much other stuff in the game, and I don't know how much of that they marketed because after a while I went kind of radio silent on the marketing because I knew I was going to get it anyway. And I played the demos, and the demos were good, so I knew I was going to pick it up. I didn't need to see what else they were talking about, but I mean, I think they just are doing a disservice to this game with its shitty title. Like that is the worst title. It's not a bad title in the way that's like offensive or anything. It's just so unremarkable and generic as fuck that
Bravely
it's just not going to sell people.
Like they just need to work on that in general. They've been pushing out like no offense to Bravely Default as a franchise, but it's just they're terrible names. Like
I will say, Octopath Traveler grew on me, and I actually really like that title now. And also, it's Octopath is a weird word, but it's like got a letter from each of the main characters' name. It's fun,
Oh,
and
I
it
didn't
grew
know
on
that.
me, but I don't think Triangle Strategy is going to grow on me as a name. Like that is just so uninteresting.
Octopath Traveler is like Triangle Strategy sounds like a project name.
Right, which it was, and then they just kind of took the project out. So yeah.
They could have called it anything.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard for me off the top of my head to think of a better word because I feel like they're always talking about like, conviction. Like, there's so much old-timey, old English sort of words in here that I don't know what they would call it, but I feel like there's a lot of things they could have chose that would do the game a little more service.
Triangle tactics and gone for like the phoneticism or like
Yeah.
literally anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Triangle strategy does absolutely nothing for me. It doesn't necessarily tell me what the game is in any real way. Like, what kind of strategy game? What the fuck does a triangle mean?
And it's so much more than a strategy game, which is why it's like also not a great title because it's going to get people's expectations up, I think, in a way that is unfounded. And at least they do have the demo out there. It's a great demo. It carries over the main game, and the demo will show you that it's not just a tactics game. But yeah, I mean, still, that's not everyone's got 3 hours to burn on a demo before they decide if they're going to pick up a game and whatnot. So
definitely come in with your equalizer set. Like, know that you're going to sit down and enjoy. You're there to enjoy a story with some tactic stuff.
Yeah,
at least initially, and not the other way around.
Yep. Okay, I think that's all there is to say on Triangle Strategy. Let's take another ad break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about some more Elden Ring, which I think is it's gonna be a constant on this podcast. I'm gonna keep talking about it. I think next week me and Travis might talk about it some more. It's just there's so much to say about this fucking game. So let's take another ad break. We'll be back in a second. Okay, Dante, we are back. Elden Ring has been out for a couple weeks now. We talked about it last week. So yeah, if anyone's listening to this far in, looking for the Elden Ring content, if you want some more spoiler-free thoughts or if you just want kind of more opening impression sort of thing, go check out last week because, Dante wasn't there. Me, Travis, and Saris talked about the game for a good amount of time in a kind of more open way. But now I want to get a little bit deeper into the spoiler. We'll call this part 2 of the Elden Ring review. So Dante, how many hours in are you at this point?
I'm terrified to say that number out loud.
Okay. I'm going to say that it's more than 30, which is where I'm at. Is it double 30? Okay, he's nodding for the audio listener.
Oh, sorry, that's right. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I might be close to 100 hours.
That's amazing. I love that, and I'm very happy for you.
It's been one of those things. Like Dylan trying to get me on the podcast today. He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna do." You said you would play some Triangle Strategy, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm definitely playing Triangle Strategy. I'm super excited about that game." And I did not look at the timeline of that at all, and how that made no sense for my Elden Ring plans, which were disgusting. I've been work, sleep, shit Elden Ring for since day one, since that Thursday. That's Thursday at 6 o'clock.
That fateful Thursday. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So let's talk about spoilers. Okay, so here's where we're at. So I haven't done everything in all these areas, but Limgrave is open. Okay, the whole thing open for spoiler discussion.
For business.
We're going east. Okay, so I'm just trying to work into these spoilers so people can dip out when they want. But east of Limgrave is Caelid. I don't know if it's Caelid.
Oh, that's east. Yeah, Caelid.
Yeah, I guess that's how you pronounce it. So I haven't done everything there, but I've at least gone around the whole overworld part of it and seen most of it. There's a lot of bosses there that are just completely fucking me up. So I haven't fought or done everything there, but at least I'm going to say that's open for discussion. And then going north of Limgrave, you got Stormvale. That's all good. Okay, where that's open. You go north of that, you got Liurnia of the Lakes. That's all good. I once again haven't done everything there, but at least I've seen all of it. I've done the Academy and cleared that out. I've got so far. I've finished the Academy, and I've gone up the lift of Destus, the Grand Lift of Destus, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
So I've gone up there and I've spent like a half an hour up there. Yeah, so I've not done much.
Around.
What's that?
So how many lords have you beaten?
2.
You beat. I'm gonna say names. Heads up.
I know all the names because.
Well, no, I'm
okay.
So Godric and Renala. You've beat.
Yeah, that's who I've beat. Yeah.
Okay. How about that Renala fight? At the end of that Renala fight, the second phase of that Renala fight was like, okay, I'm home. Like that's when I
Yeah.
really. I'm sorry. You're gonna watch me wax poetic a few times.
For sure.
That was such a key moment for me to realize the direction of this game was going exactly where I wanted it to go. I adore Bloodborne. I love all of the FromSoft games. Let me back that up. Like they're all of them. If I had to really sit down and think about a top 10 list, like 6 of those games would be FromSoft games nowadays. It's broken. Like they've ruined video games for me in a lot of ways. As they should have, because I feel like Elden Ring is once again like pushing the bar in the right direction. Like they're one of the few that I think like they change video games enough that actually like are worth getting so damn excited about. But Renala specifically was such a captivating fight for me because like how much I love Bloodborne and how Bloodborne leads you by the hand down this like, it's vampires and werewolves and like all of this like horror based stuff, and then out of nowhere you're dealing with like Cthulhu monsters and fucking alien beasts from the water and talking about wombs and all types of just really weird stuff that you're like, this does not fit like the way that I expected it to. And like I think Renala was my first like realization that like maybe this is going to go elsewhere. And like I'm not going to spoil anything. I won't confirm where it goes because honestly I still don't know. Like 100 hours in almost, I still have like so many questions about where the story is going to go because I have really worked through all of Caelid. I've worked through all of Limgrave / that southern piece of Limgrave where Castle Morn is.
Yeah, I guess the Weeping Peninsula.
Yeah, I have done all of Liurnia. And then, subtle spoiler, I have finished most of the underground areas up into those points.
So in like Limgrave, like the Sophia River or Sofria, I've done not everything there, but some stuff there. So that's open. We'll talk about that as well because that's exciting.
Oh my gosh!
But yeah, like I think we'll just jump around to.
Well, hold on. Let me finish that thought just because I will lose it. The reason, so Renala's fight, like you start seeing lots of like moon-based stuff, and they hint in Magic a lot about like space a little bit, and I was like, oh fuck, he's gonna do it again. And like instead of it going like full on like the Cthulhu side of things, I keep forgetting that guy's name. I've been on this podcast 3 times and forgotten this guy's name because I've wanted to bring him up multiple times.
HP Lovecraft.
Lovecrafty and stuff. So all the Lovecrafty and stuff comes in. I really do think this might, and like this is unwarranted outside of like reading text on stuff and seeing a moon in a boss fight. I really do think this might go somewhere like space driven and like Radon, like his text leading up to him, not just like the text you get, is Star Scourge Radon. Right. Like, and then Renala is literally using moon magic and stuff like that. And I just love how it's like hinting early, like this is not just going to be your hard fantasy. This is going to be something else entirely.
Right.
Strap in. And I don't know. It fucking made me lose my mind. Renala made me lose my mind. Go ahead. Sorry. You can guide me. No. I was just going to get on tangent after tangent from that.
I like that fight too, because I mean, that whole academy area, like that's a just well-designed level. I enjoyed that. The fight itself, like the first phase just is very much reminding me of Deacons of the Deep in Dark Souls 3.
Which was a disappointing thing to walk
guy
into.
You got to hunt down, and then they're all wearing robes as well. And then there's it kind of evolves from there. So I like that first phase, and then the second phase is just so trippy.
Oh yeah, that's I think what makes that boss fight so successful is exactly that. Like you walk in, especially as somebody who has previous Souls experience, you're like, man, another one of these. Like this is such a gimmick that you have used over and over again, and then it changes into something much cooler. So like at first I walked in that fight and I was like, all right, let's get this fucking one out of the way. And then my jaw dropped moments afterward. It's just like it was a sign of them handling a second phase really well too, because the first phase is so simple once you figure out what you have to do, and the second phase is actually where you're like working on the fight. Whereas a lot of times, like in Dark Souls 3, I always forget her name, but in the Ashes of Ariandel DLC, there's a fight fairly early on in that DLC where there's 3 phases.
Mm-hmm.
I forget her name. I don't know why I'm
It starts
like
with an F, right?
yeah,
Sister Freed. Sister Freed. Yeah.
Freed. Yeah. Which like that boss fight is gorgeous and incredible, but like it's a pain in the ass and frustrating because like you're just like,
Oh,
all
I
right,
love that boss fight.
but
I
like
think
you
it's
get through the
great.
first 2 health bars a dozen times, and then you get to the third one over and over again. It's like, all right, I would have taken
that's fair.
this as one long health bar, or I don't know, just something different than like that gotcha moment over and over again. But the only reason that one is
I see where you're coming
frustrating.
from, but I think to me that adds so much to that fight actually is this kind of endurance part to it. And that's the same thing with like what's his name, Slave Knight Gale as well.
Gale,
In
yeah.
that,
See, but Gale only
and
has
I
2 phases,
love that
right?
because it's
Oh,
so
Gale's incredible.
because it's like I like these endurance based fights at times, and it's you know it is kind of DLC, also that dragon in the DLC in Dark Souls 3 as well. Like there's a lot of these kind of
I also hate that motherfucker.
you know bosses that have a lot of HP.
Right.
At least
Yeah,
for
they're
so
endurance
going
fights.
back to Renala, this is one criticism I have of the game is just the balance and how it's hard to balance. Because to me that fight was a bit too easy. Like the first time I got to the second phase and then I lost, and then the second time I just very easily beat her without really having to think. And like it's great visually, but then it kind of goes in that camp with me, and I'm really only a Dark Souls 3 guy, so everything I relate to in terms of soul stuff is that. But it's like High Lord Wolnir in Dark Souls 3, where it's like that's not a mechanically interesting fight, but it's a spectacle.
Once you figure it out.
And so I kind of have to put Ronaldo in there because it's just way too easy. And, you know, part of the difficulty is just because the way the game is designed and because you're going to do things out of order. And they just didn't really put any effort into balancing things based on where you are personally. So
Which
I think it was a bit too easy, unfortunately, but it's visually amazing. That level is great. So to me, it's one of the best fights in the game so far, but I don't think it's an all-timer for me.
I will. It's not. It's honestly like just a really sick visual moment.
Yeah.
Some of the
I love the story relevance of it, as you mentioned. Like that's cool.
Boss, there's some amazing boss fights in this game that come much later, and I'm not even remotely going to get into them. But
I'm excited for that because to be honest, I feel like at this point I've had a few, but I've had more uninteresting fights than I have had interesting ones, and I think part of that to me is there is a lot of repeated content in this game.
Not
maybe
as much as
I shouldn't say a lot.
Not a lot, but there's definitely a good bit.
Yeah, like there's a couple. Like I did this last night where there's a cave, one of those like catacombs you go into, and like all those catacombs like are pretty much have the exact same design to them. Like they have like one different main room.
Still changed.
Yeah, I know, but like at least where I'm at, like, and then I go to the end of this catacomb, and then it's like this same watchdog boss that I just fought, but now he has like I killed him in 5 shots because I'm high level. It's like that sucks. Like I feel like it's not. It's like I kind of feel like I wasted 15 minutes going in there. And I have found a few of that, and like I think it is partly the way I'm doing this game is I am going to one area, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, and then I'm like captivated by something in the distance. I go, and then I come back to this area, and it's like I'm doing things maybe out of order, but at the same time, it's so vast. I'm like I'm not going to find everything immediately when I go through it. So I don't know. I just wanted to mount that. This is like a minor criticism in terms. My 30 hours has been like mostly just absolutely in love, but I did want to at least be devil's advocate a bit, and that there is some issues with balance in this game and repeated content and like certain reuse of content. Here's another thing. So Redmane Castle, I was talking to you about this because we had very different experiences with this area, but I go through this huge castle that has like different entrance points, and it's great. Like there's mini bosses in there. It's the verticality of it. Like one of my favorite, like when we're talking best levels at the end of the year, like Redmane Castle is going to be up there for me. And then when I got to the end of this, I had this boss fight where first I have to fight 2 enemies at once. I have to fight a misbegotten warrior, which is the same as a Leonine misbegotten, that fight, and then a Crucible Knight, which is like, you know what a Crucible Knight is? Like, have you seen one of them by name?
I literally am sitting at
I'm
sitting at a bonfire right now where I have to fight 2 of them.
Yeah, then they're fucking terrifying. I don't know why they've been like the hardest fight in the game for me, even though the first 2 I thought weren't set up as like boss fights and don't have health bars like boss fight health bars, but they are so difficult.
Yeah, they're still fucking hard. They continue through the game. You will see those motherfuckers throughout, and they're like a Black Knight in like Dark Souls. It's like they're meant to be that guy you see and you're like, man, what are you doing here? Like, I've been dealing with all the little guys this whole time, and you're just posted up on the corner. Like, there's been so many times that I've been walked up to a Crucible Knight, and I was like, are you on a cigarette break? Why are you here? Like, you're just like chilling up on a mountain by yourself. Like, are you taking the view? And why are you so angry that I'm here now also?
The first one I saw was in Stormvale Castle, and he's kind of out on the cliffs. And I ended up beating him because I went up an elevator, and then he like attacked me and fell into a hole. And I was like he fucked me up a few times. So I was like, I won that fight. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you're the better fighter. I won you won the battle, but I won the war on this one. And so to me, when I finally got to the end of Redmane, and I had to fight a Crucible Knight along with, so I talked about this a bit last week, but the first major area I went to was Castle Morn, and the first major boss fight I did was Leonine Misbegotten down at the fucking end of this castle, way off on the edge of the corner, just completely exiled.
Hanging
and so
out on a beach.
To me, that was like the first fight that I got fucked up so many times. I went back, leveled up a bit more, came back, got fucked up. I eventually found like the whip is really good against him, so I ended up beating him that way. And I was like, that was the first boss fight that I beat that I just got up and I was cheering, like popping off in my living room. And so when I get to the end of Redmane Castle and it's that guy and a Crucible Knight, in that case I was like totally okay with reused content, because it was like taking these two battles that I really enjoyed, and I had not really felt like I'd overcome the Crucible Knight. And I just, when I finally figured out this fight after like 15 hours of like every few levels coming back and trying it again and coming up with this strategy where I just take out the Misbegotten Warrior like before the Crucible Knight can even spawn, like I just try and get him down, and then I actually like, I gotta get good here. I can't cheese this Crucible Knight. I gotta beat him. When I finally did it, like the best feeling ever. So there is times when like the use of like a recurring fight is good, but then there's also, it's like, I've fought this tree with the big ass around these Erd trees like 7 times now, and like I don't feel like I need to do this again where it's just the same fight but he has more health and does more damage now. Like, that's kind of annoying, but
they change. Those change as well. At
least the 4 I've done have been the exact same with different damage numbers, but or maybe they just didn't do different moves that they had. I don't know, but
no, there are some that are similar and there are some that are different. Like there's some that do Scarlet Rot damage instead. They're definitely
God, I
like
hate Scarlet Rot so
much. So like it's one of those things that I think Souls games are good at this, but like I think it might be something in this style it might not be working as well. I have always enjoyed seeing an enemy in the beginning of a Souls game and him being so incredibly punishing, and then they throw him at you. So like, once again, a Dark Souls example, this is Dark Souls 1. But like in the very beginning of that game in, I forget the names of the locations too. I'm having full on brain farts today. Anyway, in the Undead Burg, in Undead Burg is you see your first Black Knight, right? And he's like a fucking problem. Like, he is definitely there to stop you in your tracks. He respawns, which is like, they stopped doing that later on. Like these big super tough enemies you find, they don't respawn them for you anymore, which is beautiful. They don't in this game. But at the very end of Dark Souls 1, every enemy in that zone is a Black Knight.
Nice.
Which is like, it's effective because it's this person that you've been bumping up against throughout, and then finally at the end you're like, oh, okay, I know how to handle you motherfuckers. I'm ready.
Well, that's a bit of a different case.
That
though,
is
because
that
in
is
this
different.
game what they do is great. Is I think it's the first gameplay thing is like you go down, you get fucked up by that grafted spider guy, right? Is that like the very first thing you do? And then I eventually like got teleported to that area and went to go fuck him up again, and like that was amazing to come back and get some revenge on this guy that like I knew when I saw him, I'm like, I'm supposed to die to this guy, aren't I? But when I finally found him and could mess him up when I was stronger and had more skills in the game, like that felt great. And that's not reused content though. That's like kind of coming back to a fight.
The tree one makes sense to me because you only find them under the Erd trees.
Yeah.
Right? They're defending the Erd trees.
Yeah, for sure.
A part of the Erd tree or something like that. I don't know. So like you kind of know to expect them there. Dragons get reused, palette swapped a little bit.
That's cool though in Caelid. Like that, I like that as well because
they're so different.
Thematically, it is like built up and it's like daunting to see like 4 dragons in your point of view, you know?
Yeah, like Limgrave, you have regular ass dragons. Liurnia, you have like magic dragons that shoot magic shit at you. And then in Caelid, they're shooting rot stuff at you. So they change them up enough. they do the same thing with their Erd trees. Some of the Erd trees are going to use more magic. Some of them have rot.
Right.
The thing that I have seen a ton of reuse content in that has not necessarily bothered me because what I'm relating it to, like this is where past experience I think is helping me. Like these are Bloodborne Chalice dungeons. And if I've been thinking of them that way, so it hasn't affected me at all that like, oh yeah, this might be slightly palette swap dungeon.
Yeah.
But and like all the caves are very similar. All of the like they call them different things too. Like each of the dungeons has a different name. Some of them are more like mines. Some of them are more like a traditional dungeon.
Yeah.
They do change them up enough. Like you will go into some places and you will not fight a single enemy, and there's literally like chariots going back and forth and trying to run you over and shit. And it's literally just trying to like figure out how to move through the area. But it is super annoying when you see those little gargoyle motherfuckers for the 30th time, right? Like you're like, okay, I don't feel like doing this one.
Yeah.
But
it's not egregious by any means. But
no, and the content's brief too. Like that's actually like one of the best parts of those is like you start one of those dungeons and you're in and out of it as long as you're like able to make through the boss and everything. Yeah. In and out in 15 minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just when you like, and sometimes when you get to that boss, it's like, oh, last time I fought this guy, it was only one of them. Now there's two of them. Now there's two of them, and they do Scarlet Rot, right? There's like palette swap stuff like that. The only reason that it never bothers me is because it's one, they're short, and two, the item you get at the end of these is always clutch. I'm always super stoked at what I get. Like you're like, I don't know, but like,
well, okay, that leads into another. Sorry, you can finish your thought, but
okay, yeah. Occasionally, it's like a weapon. Occasionally, it's like a weapon or a charm, which is this game's rings. Maybe you get a spell. Maybe you get an ash. I always feel like I come out with, if not something I will use now, something I will be interested in using in another build. It's never like, man, I've just wasted my time with this entire piece. And if I did waste my time and I'm never going to touch the item, it was 15 minutes and I got some runes out of it, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Ahead.
So one I want to call it a problem, but it's just that, man, so many of the rewards that I've got, at least recently or in certain locations that make sense, is just like magic things like a wand or I don't know, like a memory stone or something like that. And yeah, like that's just
sword
not
and board boy.
Yeah, I'm sword to the day. Well, actually, I'm using an axe, a giant. I'm using Godrick's axe right now. That's kind of been my go-to weapon for a while. And I'm not using any magic at all. My faith is like I am, I don't know, worshiping Satan. Like my faith is so low. Like, and all my magic
atheist
stats
mode.
All my magic stats are so low, and I'm at a point now where it's like a level up takes, I don't know, it takes enough points that I'm like not really gonna invest in that. And you know, I get a lot of rewards that are just like magic things, and I'm never gonna use this. And at least in this build, like I do want to do a second playthrough. It's I don't think that's really an issue because like most of the time I enjoyed the thing I cleared to get there, and I enjoyed the journey of it. But yeah, I do feel like there's a lot of that, and I feel like when I do that magic build, I'm gonna find some axes and shit that's like I'm never gonna have the strength to wield this. So I don't know. I guess I feel weird.
How about both? That's what I'm doing. I'm doing a strength build, and it's been that's I guess a big difference. Like I've been running into stuff that I've been like, man, I'd like to give that a shot, or I wonder what my intelligence is at. Let me pump like an extra few points into that just to give it a shot. Like, which has always been a factor, but the fact that I feel like I'm stumbling upon these things way more than like knowing homie drops this and I need to farm him for 45 minutes. Like, is just a little, I don't know. Like, I guess it's so funny because I'm still in such like a honeymoon phase with this game. And the games that I love that it is so heavily compared to, I still think it's doing those parts so much better. Like, I fucking love Breath of the Wild. But, like, I would take these dungeons over...
The shrines are horrible. Like,
there's some fucking awesome ones.
Okay,
there's
like
so few and far
5 out of 110.
I know, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And then all the major dungeons are awful. Whereas like these major dungeons are the most like well pieced together.
Stormvale Castle is fucking amazing.
Stormvale, Ray Lucaria, and then Redmane, like those are three right off the bat that like those are the first three. And Morn counts. Morn feels
for
like
most
more
people,
of a side
probably,
one.
yeah.
But like Morn seems like a side one to me, like almost like those ones are like substantial. Like I could have spent 10 hours in the open world and then 10 hours in Stormvale.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like the fact that there is that much to do in that small area versus this big sprawling space, like Limgrave versus Stormvale.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I felt like I could spend almost as much time. The fact that I've 100 hours in, better understanding of the game, gone back to Stormvale and found another dozen things.
Yeah,
like,
I still feel like there's more I have to do there too.
Oh my
is
gosh,
exciting.
it is exhausting almost. Like there's 2 secret bosses in Stormvale.
That's
I don't know if
awesome.
you know that. Like there's
no,
2 secret bosses.
feel like I did a good amount of exploring, but I also know that there is like other areas that I haven't been to yet there, and that's an exciting thought. And yeah, I mean, like it truly feels like a town within a castle, which is amazing because it's just, and then like the Godric fight is really good. I really like that fight. I felt so good when I finally learned the secrets to it. It's super weird and grotesque. I like the dark humor too of that weird ass guy like kicking his sludge around when you finally take him out. Like it's great. And now that I use his weapon, like I kind of think of that too. I'm thinking of Godric a lot too.
Just him
and like the special ability of that axe is like his like earthquake move that he used. But yeah, that's an amazing, like that's probably my favorite fight in the game so far. I mean, I really like that one at Castle Redmane, but I think pound for pound, like just individual boss, I'd have to give it to Godric. He's been my favorite so far in terms of just raw gameplay of it.
Mine is
would I have seen yours yet?
I'm not gonna say.
Okay.
Nope. I will say if difficulty is a worry of yours,
it's not.
I think okay. Well, you made it sound like it was.
There's things that are too easy.
Yeah,
I haven't encountered anything yet that. Sorry, go ahead.
I think this is where I think maybe balancing early on is interesting and a little forgiving. I'd even call it. Like I know so many people come into Souls games and they're like, yeah, I get stuck at the first or second boss and I just stop playing. Like that's not a thing here, or it doesn't have to be a thing here, which is something I think is like incredible. Like you can love soul level 1 and run in there and get your ass beat, sure, but like I think after a point, I think most Souls games do this too. After a point, this shit doesn't matter or does not care what level you are, and just starts pushing your shit in. It's like you should have a better understanding of this by now.
Yeah.
Like I think in Dark Souls 3, that's like Pontiff, right? Like you can kind of
that fight's so hard.
But like Pontiff is such an eye-opening moment. Like you can really like brute force your way through most of that game. Then you get to Pontiff and you're like, I need to figure it out. I actually need to figure this out. But then you are so much better suited for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
I think surprisingly, Margaret and Godric are early walls. If you go in too early, which is an important lesson for people to go leave and do other things. But I'd actually think those are like, you having an easy time on them is because you probably approached it the way that the game actually expected you to, is to go and do other things and then come back.
I mean, Godric took me a while. Like that guy really fucked me up. I did. Margit was pretty easy. That was. I
spent more time on Margit than I did on.
I mean, it took me a while before I went to Stormvale at all. Like before I even went up the hill from the starting area. Because I went elsewhere first. So that makes sense, I guess, in a way. But I also might have just got lucky. Who knows? It could be a playstyle. There's a lot of reasons for it.
You're just too good.
Well, no, I mean, Godric fucked me up. I lost to Leonine, misbegot. That's the thing. Leonine was my Margit. That was my first fight that like was a brick wall because I didn't go up to Margit at first. And Leonine took me like 30 tries. Like
I did Castle Morn. I did Castle Morn right after I got to the boss wall of Raya Lucaria.
Right. Yeah, because I remember I was on Discord with you when you went over to Castle Morn and fought.
Yeah. I was way OP. I was way OP when I got there. I fucking clapped that dude. I just like waxed him and wonder. I was like, wait, I got an achievement for this? What? Like that was easy. But it's that alone. Like I think that southern area is like damn near a tutorial.
Yeah, no, I mean I don't want it to sound like I'm saying the game's too easy, because absolutely not. And there is a lot of bosses that have messed me up so much that I'm out of there. Like a lot of stuff in Caelid, especially with the storm rot or the whatever that blood root's called. Like I don't know how that works, and I haven't figured that out yet. And I'm just not gonna fight these bosses yet. So, but then then there is areas too where, and it's fun to feel powerful. But when I go into an area and I clear out this dungeon and it's like a boss that I've already fought before, it's like what? Why am I seeing this guy again? That doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. That's kind of
Yeah.
unfortunate, but
No, I
it's a
hear
minor.
you
It's I
there.
wanted to get some negatives out of the way,
Oh
but
yeah. No, I
it
think that's
truly
just
is like like these are minor qualms in the
oh yeah.
grander scheme of things.
I think yeah, and it's just the nature of the like less curated dungeon format. That's kind of like your side stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it,
definitely.
it, it it's balanced enough, I think. Just enough. Like I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like perfect, that it's like, oh, you're level 37, so I'm gonna make it like 2 points harder than the guy for level 35. Like, and I don't want that necessarily either, because that's what people bounce off of. Is
Mm-hmm.
this, and that's why so many people didn't beat Sekiro, right? It's because Sekiro is just get good central. There's no
Yep.
leveling through this stuff, right? But once again,
that
it
was my
gets to a
experience. So
right. But once again, it gets to a point where it doesn't matter. Like they're the major boss of Caelid. I fought 30 plus times, and they clearly have one shot mechanics.
mm-hmm.
That like it's like if you don't get how to handle this, you're gonna be dead every single time. Like this is just how this fight works, which is like I'm not a huge fan of, but like it's an example. It's an early example of the game saying, "All right, training wheels are off. Like you
Mm-hmm.
beat the first dungeon, or you beat the first and second. I think Renala is actually like one of the easier fights, but
Right.
just like so mystical and beautiful,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
has like
I'm down for a fight that's easier, but is a spectacle.
she kind of reminded me of like a broken up Rom the Vacuous Spider from
I don't think
Bloodborne.
I've fought that guy.
Yeah. Well, it's big spider on a lake. You can see the moon in the background. It's
Nice.
very similar. It's
That's
very
cool.
similar, actually, except the ads you're fighting during the fight instead of before the fight, which I prefer also.
Right.
Man.
I have a question for you, and
Yes.
you don't have to fully spoil it, but I'm curious. So there's these, and you see them in the loading screens, but there's these giant rock dudes with bells underneath them, kind of like a cow's udder or something.
Yes.
And they just cruise around, and
Yeah, they do.
I for a lot of them, I'm like, I got to get on top of this guy, obviously, but I don't really know how. Eventually I did, and I went inside a door, and there was nothing, and they're not even like souls to pick up. So I don't know what am I missing there? Is there something I'm supposed to do, or is it just this one that was for some reason doesn't have anything in it?
Into an off one. Did the one that you dropped, did it have a bell under it?
The one I'm talking about is kind of east of the lakes, where it's up on this hill, and there's two of them that are like right beside each other, pretty much.
Yep.
And there's a lower one, and I can't remember if he had a bell under him. I think he did, but I can't be sure. And yeah, I went in, and he had like on the there's like a table, and then there's like a corpse, like a burnt corpse. It kind of looks like the dragon mode thing in Dark Souls 3, whatever that's called, and he doesn't have a head. So what my guess was, like, I got to bring this head here or something. But I don't know. I just wanted to get it. I just want to know if I'm on the right track. Or
Let me guess. Let me guess something. You had, when you did that, had you beaten Renala yet?
No.
And you spent that soul on the axe. You spent Godric's soul on the axe.
Yes.
Can I just tell you what it does? It's not a giant spoiler.
I want to know what I'm missing.
It duplicates those souls. You didn't have any in your inventory, so it didn't work. That body.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, you asked me not to spoil it. I'm
so are they all like that, or is it just that one?
I don't know. I haven't dropped more than one, and that was the only one that I did.
Okay.
And I was like, from that point on, I was like, oh, I'm going to save these.
Right.
I think they're one-time use.
Yeah, they definitely are, because the Renala one, I was like, well, I get 2 magic items for this. I'm not going to use this. So I just took the souls out of it, but I guess I should have saved it and duplicated it and at least got double the souls from it then?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll save the next ones, and I wonder if I go back to that area if I lost it, but
it's not the end of the world, because
it's really not, because I only got 20,000 from her, I think.
Well, there's New Game Plus, and you can just get them both anyway.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting. I was just like, oh, wow, this is a way for me to get like both like boss weapons in one run, or both. Like, that's never been a thing.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's cool. I just
they're saving you from having to do multiple passes through the game that way. I do think they're limited, so I don't think you can do it for every soul. And I didn't realize for the first like 3, so I'm right there with you. I lost the first few. But yeah, they duplicate those. It's a nice little quality of life thing if you stumble upon it. If not, then it doesn't affect. That's my favorite thing, is like there's so many like functional parts of that game that you could just avoid and never use. Like the ashes, you could never find that bell.
Right.
I didn't find that bell until after I beat Godric.
Well, I think that's one thing I see a lot of people criticizing the game for, not tutorializing things and like not teaching things. And I agree to an extent. Like I should be able to easily figure out how to two-hand my weapon rather than having to Google it.
It's not a big deal. They tell you.
I know they do, but they also tell you 1,000 other things with a very quick tooltip that only appears once, right? Like
That's true. You're right. You're right.
They don't teach you. They tell you technically, like on paper, they can say, "I told you that," but they don't teach you. They don't teach you how to do it
on the ground that I could have easily stumbled past. No, I think every single one of my friends when I don't know how to dual wield in this game anymore after the fact.
I mean, I'm
defending Miyazaki.
Well, no, that's one thing I'm getting at is that like there is a lot of things in the game like that they aren't really explained, or like once again on paper they told you but they didn't really teach it to you. And for the most part, I don't really see that as a problem because you don't need any of that stuff, or at least I assume that the later boss fights I can beat with my build. I can beat them with any build.
You could punch any boss to death in this game. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Like,
that's where I feel like.
Of it.
And it's not like it's.
Level.
And it's not like every boss is designed like, okay, you're supposed to use magic on this guy and sit in the back corner. Like, you can do different stuff, and other builds are going to be easier than other ones, but you can also just on the fly, like, okay, maybe my double Godric axe is not good here, and I need a shield instead, so I can just do that. And so most of the time, I don't really have an issue with that stuff, because you don't need all those mechanics. And, like, for example, how to use magic, I have no idea how to use magic. I'm not going to worry about that until I'm doing my second playthrough. And so I generally don't see it as an issue. And like something like that, like I'm not sitting here salty that I lost that soul because I didn't duplicate it at this bell tower dude.
As you shouldn't be.
That's like that's a cool bonus. I'm glad I know that now. But I'm not like mad at the game that it didn't explicitly give me a paragraph dialogue explaining like, oh, when you fight Renala, you're gonna get this soul that gives you this. Don't use that right away because instead you should bring it here, give it to this random headless dude, and then he's gonna duplicate it for you. Like, I don't need that. That's not necessary. And so for the most part, I don't think that's really an issue in the game at all.
No, I actually say that's a benefit. Like the fact that you can make it all the way through the game and not see so much of it gives you a million different reasons to go back to stuff. Like, or you can get 30 hours into this game and be like, holy shit, I didn't know you could do that. And that's like one of the best moments. Like, even if it is something you look back and you're like, man, I could have made all these moments easier for myself. Like, I am somebody who is like meticulously checking off every box in a video game if I can, right? And I find it to be pretty frustrating when I can't for whatever reason. Like Final Fantasy X-2, for example, 100%ing that game. I've replayed Final Fantasy X-2 and never beaten that game because I always get to like 99.7%, and I'm like, fuck this. This game's broken. If anybody who knows how to do 100% run in Final Fantasy X-2, I think you'll feel my pain. It's dumb. It's really dumb. Whereas this game, I don't have any like FOMO at all. Like I'm not stuck like what happened there or I didn't get to see that. Like it's like that cool conversation you get to have with a friend. And some games do a really, really great job of that. And some are just like, oh yeah, did you get to quest number 72 on the list? And it's like, that's boring. That's a boring conversation as well. Instead of like, holy shit, did you find that thing in the well? Did you see what happens when you go down it?
Let's talk about the well. Let's talk about the well.
Oh, I literally said well is like an accident, and there literally is a sick well.
That well is the fucking coolest
no,
area.
I know exactly. I was like, man, that was a totally a happy accident. Like Siofra, holy shit!
Getting that's up there
to that moment. That's the thing. This game is so excellent. Just like you just get nice and comfy in whatever you're doing. You just going through the motions. It's really boring. You went through the same dungeon 3 times. You fought the same boss fight 3 times because there's so much reused content. And then you go down an elevator, and it's fucking different.
And this elevator goes down.
Exciting.
This elevator goes down.
I started
and then
singing
it goes down
Metal Gear Solid 3 music. I started singing Snake Eater when I was going down the elevator just because I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is a long ladder. I'm here for a long ladder. Let's get the music pumping. It's just so gorgeous. So you just walk in. It's like really one of the first elevators you have the ability to find. You probably have seen many at that point, depending on which route you're going. But like you walk in, you take the elevator down, you think it's going to go down a level, and it goes down and down and down. And then it like opens up and you see a cave system and you're like, okay, there's caves down here. And then it keeps going down. And then you start to see this like starry night particle effect everywhere, and the world becomes purple around you. And but when you get to the bottom, there's trees and there's a river, and it's like this whole underground biome that is like not an underground. It looks like you're above ground. It just so happens to have a ceiling way, way, way above you. Like there's literally stars in the sky.
It's crazy. Yeah, so
gorgeous.
So my experience with this too. So I did stuff in a weird order, I guess, generally, because I didn't, exhaustively explore Limgrave before I, went out in the next area. And so for me, the first time I was there was when you go for the four belfries is this area where you can go to these different towers and they teleport you to random places.
Oh, no.
And so, no, this was amazing for me because I went there and the first one I opened takes you to like this kind of hill up there. And when I loaded into that area, I was like, what the fuck am I seeing? Because I remember you mentioned when we were talking on Discord, like, man, there's like some space stuff. And I'm like, is there like, I've seen there's a moon, but like, I don't know if there's really space stuff. And so when I teleported in there, I was just like, for like 5 minutes, just shocked, just on top of this, looking around. I could see this kind of, what looked more like civilization down below. Up there's this other island up top with this kind of almost Greek palace kind of thing. And then I go down. I finally realized, I can actually jump down here. And then I go, and of course there's a Crucible Knight there, and he fucks me up. And
that's what I said. That's why I said fuck. It's because like I fought that Crucible Knight so many times. Like I spent more time on that Crucible Knight than most bosses.
Yeah.
And this is the one time I've bashed my head up against something and been super upset with myself afterwards. That motherfucker doesn't drop anything. He doesn't drop anything.
Dude, every time I kill them,
I'm
like, give me your weapon.
Something.
I hope you drop your sword. I want that sword so bad.
Every single other Crucible Knight I fought has dropped something.
Yeah.
So I would fight. There was a moment where I was like super confident. I had died a million times that Crucible Knight, left, fucked off wherever, and like leveled up a ton.
So did you discover that area before Siofra as well, or did you go?
No, I found Siofra. Okay. I found the elevator that brings you down to Siofra. This game does, and I'm not going to say anything more than this. This game does such a good job of like carrot on the stick stuff. You don't even know it's carrot on the stick stuff until later.
Right.
Like they're teasing, and this has always been a thing with like Miyazaki's like storytelling is like by the end of any of those games, you have so much better understanding of what's going on in that world that like those moments that he was like teasing you and you had no idea he was teasing you were like incredible little Easter eggs towards what's coming. And I think like this game does an excellent job of that just by this teleportation thing that they do.
Yeah.
Of being like, there's more coming, motherfucker. Don't you worry. Like, if you thought it was just Limgrave, just you wait. I got some crazy stuff for you. And they'll just you'll open a chest and it'll teleport you somewhere and you're like, where the fuck am I?
Well,
and then you're also terrified because it's like a complete unknown.
Yeah. And like the way the map becomes bigger as you, like, obviously there's things that are clouded out, but then it starts zooming out, which I think is good because then they kind of bury the lead a bit too. They hide, they mask what you're going to expect, and that's good. And so that four belfries area I've really liked because the other one, the second one that I opened up, takes you to, I forget the name of the place, but it's now, I've just discovered on the map that I'm like really close to that, up on like the Grand Lift of Destus when you fight that like giant dude. And then the third one that I've unlocked now, and I finally got the key for it, is like some weird windy like tornado palace, and I got fucked up by the enemies there. I'm like, I'm gonna come back here a bit later, but I cannot wait to discover more of this area.
I assume that one, and like I said, I did the same thing. I discovered it, got my ass whooped, and then left. I have a feeling that one's very similar to the Siofra one, where it's like, here's something cool.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll see it, maybe you won't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's all
and it's cool because I have some idea of like, okay, looking at this one area on the map, like I think this could be where that ends up being, because I haven't got a checkpoint there, I think. So I don't know if I don't think I didn't get a checkpoint there, but I don't know.
I don't think you get a checkpoint there.
I don't know if can you look at your map? Because I don't know. Maybe you can. I just haven't looked at where I was on the map.
I know that the one with the tornadoes or the hurricanes that you kind of see, I do not have a checkpoint there yet. And that's crazy. So this is the crazy part. Like I've tried to dig super deep into all the areas. I think I've done a reasonable job, but I know there's stuff I'm missing in every single one. Plenty I'm missing in every single one. Limgrave, I definitely like combed the most, and I know there's about a dozen other places I haven't been. I am up through, so there's Caelid, Liurnia, Limgrave, and then there's this like northern area.
Yeah.
I'm in there right now, and there's a bunch of stuff that's kind of underground.
Sure.
I am about halfway done with that northern area.
Mm-hmm.
I think I still have 2, 3, maybe 4 locations left to go.
That's insane.
That are all their own expansive areas. Like,
yeah.
I'm nervous. I was like, oh, I'm going to take my time. And now I'm realizing, oh, fuck, this might be a 200-hour game for me. But I know there's people who are beating it at 80, but like I'm well past that.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not there. I know I'm not reaching the point where I'm like hitting final boss territory, right? Like, just looking at like story achievements alone, they're hidden on Steam, but I still got like 15 left, and those are usually just bosses.
Crazy.
So
yeah,
I'm hoping there's plenty.
It's it's a huge game, and yeah, even in the areas that I've been, obviously I have a lot more to do. But yeah, going back to Siofra River, so yeah, it was cool to discover it for like that area first from that little mountain essentially in the sky. And then to go back to Siofra, go down that massive elevator, that exact description you gave, and seeing those stars again and being like, oh shit, is this like
that's cool that you realized you were getting there
cave?
That way. That's really sick.
And then it takes a bit, because you have to kind of go through this area where there's these ruins and these weird enemies that are spamming magic, and they're really slow, but they do a fuck ton of damage. And so I cruised around there for a bit, and then I went up another elevator, and then walked out a few steps, and then I realized like, oh shit. And then I looked up and saw that area that I was at before. So to connect it that way was really cool. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm in that place that I really wanted to get to. And I had no idea that I would find it by going down this random well in Limgrave. That was an amazing moment. And then even when you first walk out, they kind of scripted so that like these like deer-like animals like start walking out along the water, and yeah, this place feels super real, and it's like
alive, right?
Dude,
like,
it's Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye, because it's this dark underground thing. You can see these stars in the sky. The enemies there have horns, and they're kind of ghostly and creepy. It's dark. You hear screeches off in the distance. The music is also very similar to Outer Wilds. So obviously, whoever didn't listen to our game of the year, it was my second favorite game of the year last year is that DLC. So the fact that it just brought me right back to that as well. And of course, there's an underground river, the same as Outer Wilds. So it's so very similar, and to discover it in that way. And now I also know that up there is like Nokrom City or something, and I haven't gotten there yet, but I know Ronnie and the squad are telling me to go find it, and I'm like,
so okay, that's super interesting.
I don't want to get spoiled on how you get there, but I cannot wait until I get up there as well and discover that area and piece that all together now.
That part is one of my favorite parts of the whole game so far.
Nice.
The part that I was like happy to hear you say that, I guess. I like, it's interesting to hear you say that, is I spent so much time in Siofra trying to figure out how to get to the top level, right? Which you piece together, right, is like part of a quest line. So my only suggestion to some people is like, if you start bashing your head up against less like a boss and more like a, how the fuck do I get here? Like, this is frustrating. I don't know how to get here. It is likely you will get there.
Yeah.
Later down the road. And I wouldn't waste too much time on it. Because I definitely like spent an additional like 5 hours in Siofra trying to get to Nokron or whatever it's called.
I felt pretty confident that it would be, I don't know, I'd find some other well entrance, or I'd get teleported there, or I don't know, fucking dig a hole in the wall until I get there or something. So yeah, I'm not in a hurry to get there, but I just love that setup, and I'm also kind of invested in Ron. Like, there's not that many characters in the game. Like, you get some at the round table, but Ronnie and the squad I find really interesting, and
You're
so I want to do their quest, and they're
like,
you gotta hurry too. So I'm like, well, I don't know how to get there, but I'll help you guys when I can.
This game, like many Souls games, but even worse than ever, getting through all of the NPC quest lines is very tricky. There's so many. They give you a lot more time to work through those quest lines, which is nice. It's not like previous Souls games where it's like, you didn't talk to blah, blah, blah before blah, 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 so blah, blah, blah's dead. That happens. Actually, that does happen plenty. But like, it feels like you kind of feel it coming. Whereas in Souls games, it's just like, well, surprise, everyone's dead.
Yeah.
I let the wrong guy out of jail and he killed my fucking maiden. Like, that kind of stuff is not as egregious. But like, I would argue there are more quest lines in this than any other Souls game that I'm familiar
Seems
with.
like it. And I would be
seen,
shocked if there wasn't, to be honest, just because it is open world.
Well, that's the piece. Like, I'm just surprised at like how much there truly is and how much is like missable from a storyline perspective. Like, you talked about Redmane, right? And like Redmane Castle, you went through and fought your way through it and fought a boss fight and like did all the stuff. I didn't touch any of that because I went through an NPC quest line that also seemed pretty easily missable. There are, I'm assuming, full quest lines that are very nebulous and like require you to exhaust people's dialogues every single time you find them. That might change the end of the game.
Yeah,
at this point. I'm not sure. I'm not like, obviously this is me speculating, but like I have a feeling this one's gonna pull me through into some new game plus places quicker than any of the other Souls games did, because like the previous ones I've finished almost every NPC quest line. Like, I really enjoy that piece of like how kind of tricky it is, and or how like you can only finish one, like some of them you can only finish this quest line in a playthrough, and you have to do the other one separately because they'll like diverge. This is doing the same thing, but like it seems like those quest lines are leading to more tangible moments than ever. Like the fact that I was able to completely skip a dungeon and go straight to the fight. And it had story implications too. Like I feel like I earned some story progress stuff or some story beats, but I lost out on the opportunity to actually experience that castle, right?
Yeah.
So in my next playthrough, I know to do the castle first and then go through that quest line, right? So
right.
I don't know. There's just the NPCs, like you may not have found many. They are abundant, and they all have like quest lines that run from literally Limgrave all the way 100 hours later. And
like that's cool.
Blythe, for example.
Yeah.
Blythe has a Blaidd. He's
Rena's, he's Ronnie's part of Ronnie's squad.
Yeah. Ronnie. Yeah. So like they have a really extensive a storyline that is theirs alone, and like you can meet him in Mistwood and hear him howling in the background and snap your fingers and he'll come down and start talking to you. I had no idea about that. It's just weird stuff.
I don't know what Mistwood is. I don't know who.
You have to do a gesture in a particular spot after hearing a howl. That's how the quest lines work in this game. It's kind of fucked up, but like when it works out,
I generally like that stuff. I think like for me in Dark Souls 3 there was like the palace in this like clouds, whatever, where you fight the nameless.
Oh, and you have to do that. You have to do the like dragon pose, like on that mat in the middle of nowhere.
I never would have found that, and so it's kind of a bummer to me that like something like that could be missed if you don't look it up. But like if it's something for an NPC quest that's not like gating you out of that area with boss fights and stuff, like that's fine to me. But and it's just kind of bonus if you do find it. Yeah, I hope there isn't too much huge things that are gated off if you don't like use the gestures. That to me, the gestures are maybe the one step that's like, hey, we're going a bit too far with this, but it's not a big. I haven't really encountered that in this game, so it's hard for me to say.
They do tell you is the thing. Like technically, they told you. Right? Like
I am taking notes, a lot of notes. I have my notebook and I'm keeping track of things, but it's a lot of lines of dialogue you only get once, so it's hard to write down every last detail.
Oh yeah, you don't know what's important in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Like. Yeah, the snapping the fingers thing though, like one of the first merchants you meet tells you. He's like, a friend of mine has been causing a ruckus in Mistwood. Like, I'm sure if you snap your fingers, he'll come right down to you, or something like some throwaway text line that he likely never says again. He said it one time, and you're like, all right, I guess I'll remember that. Hopefully, or hopefully I didn't skip through the quest dialogue too fast because it was just a regular ass merchant.
Yeah,
which are throughout the world. It definitely will like. Just throw you the like most half-assed, like plant the most half-assed seed and be like, enjoy, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I'm into it.
I think that's part of it. Like
I like the NPCs. I like tracking these quests and the ones I have been able to figure out. And there's more that I'm like I don't know. I want to figure out the next, like this one guy who's trying to get into the academy and he needs an extra key, and I brought him that key, and so he's like, oh, I'm going to go back to the academy, and I haven't gone back there and found him, but I want to, and I don't know where he's going to be, but I'm excited to go do that. That's
now fun. You got to go find the dude. Like, it does not hold your hand at all. I think that's my favorite part. I don't want my hand held in games most of the time, unless it's like something that's requires tons of explanation, like an
Yeah.
RTS or something like that. Like this game doesn't. This game allows you to learn by experiencing it, and I think that is absolutely amazing. I don't think Elden Ring out of nowhere is the Souls game for everyone. It still has so many of those fundamental ideas that I have enjoyed that many people have bounced off of.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a recommendation out of nowhere. But if you have ever been like curious about Elden Ring, this is by far the best place to start. There's so much video game here alone.
I think
right?
we talked about that a lot last week because Travis, who is on the cast, hasn't played a single minute of any Souls or From Software game, and he's like, this is one of his favorite games of all time. So that's to me, that's like that's all you need. If he can get into it, and he's not like super hardcore with these kinds of games, that's just if you invest the time and you're down to be okay not knowing every last detail and checking off all those boxes, then I think this is just such an amazing game, and you will find something to enjoy about it. Maybe not everyone will, but I think it's at least worth a shot. And I know $80 is a lot to spend to just give something a shot, but I don't know. That's for me. I think it's worth it for most
price
gamers.
Just hurted me. I forget games are $80 for you guys. That just like beat my ass. I was like, wait, what?
I mean, it's equivalent, you know. I think, but I don't know. It's more than when I was a kid. That's for sure.
Video games are $60, sir, as far as I'm concerned.
I know. I'm always talking.
PS5 games are $70 in America. So.
Right, but wasn't Elden Ring you could like buy it on PS4 and then upgrade for free? Or you could buy it on PS4 for like $60 and then upgrade it.
Yeah, there's been a few. Horizon was that way. Horizon was
maybe it was Horizon I was thinking of actually.
Yeah, Horizon was the egregious one where it was like the PS5 or PS4 version was 50, or
and then you can free upgrade.
Was 70, but you got a free upgrade with the $50 or $60 PS4 version. But you could not find the PS4 version on the PS5 shop.
Oh, there you
had to have a physical PS4, or you had to buy it on like the website.
Yeah, they don't make it easy, which is
they shouldn't have done
annoying because it's still hard to find a PS5. But anyway,
yeah, that's true. That's true. You can borrow mine.
Dante, we've been going for a while here. I know that we could talk about this for a lot longer, but I think I'll commit that we'll come back and talk more about this. It might be a bit for me because, like I said, I'm not going to have the game for maybe a week or two here, so my progress is going to be halted here. But at some point, I don't care if it's not timely anymore. People aren't talking about it anymore. I'm going to come back and do a spoiler cast with you and some other friends who have just been totally enamored with it. But is there anything else you want to say for right now before we close off for the day?
It is likely my favorite, quickly becoming one of my favorite games of all time. I can't wait to beat it. I hope there's space stuff. I don't know yet.
Yeah, spaceship, you know.
I want to go to space.
That'd be cool.
Miyazaki, take me to the moon.
Yeah. Yeah, he faked it with Sophia River, but that's not a true...
He's just teasing me.
Yeah.
He's just teasing me. He knows that moon is going to be the last thing. Moon presence is going to come down again. I'm making Bloodborne references.
And then you'll just like constantly lose health because there's no oxygen. You'll just like slowly take damage, and it'll be super annoying, and everyone will hate it and be like, man, fuck that. This shouldn't have gone to space or something.
I'm just going to spec for HP regen.
Yeah. Just counteract.
Who needs breathing when my health keeps regenerating?
It's true. It's true. And I mean, I'm already at like 10 Estus, so like I'm good to go, man.
I'll just, right? Chug. Chug away. You'll be fine.
Yeah. Okay, Dante, this was fun, and we'll come back. We'll talk about this game more. And I hope you. I think you're probably going to finish the demo for Triangle Strategy, but I hope you pick up the full game.
I'm going to play it over this weekend. Like I said, I'm going to be vacationing as well. I will have plenty of Switch time. Triangle Strategy will likely be what I dig my toes into, and then maybe a little bit of like Ollie World. That's
right. Yeah, and then we've talked about other games coming out March and beyond that we're both interested in. So I'm sure you'll be back on within a month or so. I don't know. I'm sure
I'd
you'll be
love
back soon,
to be. I'd love to be. I will play video games and talk about them.
Okay, everyone, that's going to be it for this episode. Go check out the socials. Join us on Patreon. Join the Discord. If you have any questions for me or Travis next week, thoughts on the state of play, thoughts on Horizon Forbidden West, or more Elden Ring thoughts, send them in, and I'll include that stuff in next week's episode. But yes, we'll be back again next week. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you again next time. Peace.
Bye.